Hi, I'm Carlin Borisenko. In early 2020, I was the knitting Democrat who accidentally went viral on the internet for going to a Trump rally and then left the party. I became the conservative darling, was on all the shows, traveled around the country, and then realized that conservatives were no better than Democrats. If there's one thing that I've learned, it's that both political tribes are two sides of the same coin. But it wasn't all bad. On my journey, I became obsessed with understanding the woke ideology and the culture war. I broke the story of the city of Seattle doing segregated training with its employees.
How bad has this stuff become? The city of Seattle has now put out, I'm not kidding you, this is according to Dr. Carolyn Borisenko, who's an organizational psychologist. The city of Seattle asked its white employees to voluntarily spend a day off in a training about their internalized racial superiority.
I broke the story that led to the first ever federal lawsuit against critical race theory in the schools. I broke the Coke Be Less White story, one of the biggest anti-woke stories of all time. It got over 30 million views. Coca-Cola's corporate headquarters even had to change their outgoing voicemail.
Throughout the past few days, you may have seen inaccurate reporting on the content of our recently launched diversity, equity, and inclusion training program.
I exposed the schools in Burlington, Vermont for grooming middle school children live on the internet. They called me an unwoke cult leader for that. And the Vermont Human Rights Commission slandered me publicly as being a hate channel. I even got called a hero in Breitbart for exposing that the Washington Post was writing a hit piece on Christopher Rufo. I have broken story after story after story about what's going on in the public schools, from Cambridge, Massachusetts, to autistic sex education, to the Department of Education in Michigan, literally training teachers all over the state how to groom children. I wrote a book called Actively Unwoke, the ultimate guide for fighting back against the woke insanity in your life. I host a podcast all about fighting back, and I'm downloading all of my knowledge to you on my Substack, carlin.substack.com. The world is a crazy place. We are literally surrounded by cults on all sides. On this show, we're going to do a deep dive into all aspects of the culture war, and I will show you the dark, dystopian underbellies on both sides. Here are the commitments I'll make to you. I will always tell you the truth. I will always bring you receipts. And if you stick with me, I promise you will see the world differently. Welcome to the cult. Please mount that like button for me and subscribe if you feel so inclined. Well, hello everyone. Happy Tuesday. Welcome to The Cult. The Cult is a show that I stream at 5 p.m. Monday through Friday on this here YouTube channel, on Rumble, on X, the platform formerly known as Twitter, where we talk about all aspects of the culture war, mostly focusing on the far left because the far left control everything. The far left are in the power position. And no matter how much the conservative right wants to whine about it, that's just the way it is. So we do tend to focus mostly on the left. Occasionally, we dabble in the right. But today we're going to be doing something, I wouldn't say this is actually different. Usually we watch like far left trainings and like classroom exercises and things like that. But today I feel compelled, or perhaps I'm just being lazy about it. I don't know. It could really go either way. I feel compelled to do some due diligence because, of course, in the last week, well, really for the last couple months, but particularly in the last week, the world has been in an uproar about anti-Semitism, 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 anti-Semitism. Anti-Semitism is everywhere. Everyone is an anti-Semite. If you don't support the government of Israel, you are absolutely 100% an anti-Semite because, of course, as Americans, we are obligated to support the government of Israel no matter what they do, because apparently you're just way too anti-Semitic to be an American if you don't support the government of Israel. And last week there was some testimony in front of Congress because, of course, these big donors, who all happen to be Jewish, have their panties in a twist over the fact that college students at elite universities are protesting in favor of Hamas. Now, if if they had watched my work for the past several years, they would not remotely have been caught by surprise. Because, of course, the big Jewish donors were completely fine with spending millions, tens of millions, hundreds of millions on these elite universities in order to fund the far left indoctrination that's been taking place for decades. That wasn't a problem for them. The Black Lives Matter riots of 2020 weren't a problem for them. Like the COVID nonsense wasn't a problem for them. All of the stuff that's been going on in the schools that I've been documenting for years wasn't a problem for them. All of these socialist activists that are speaking on these campuses. And guys, we have literally watched speeches that socialists, real socialists, have given at the University of Pennsylvania, who is one of the presidents that was in this testimony and has since resigned. I can show you a playlist on Harvard's YouTube channel. In fact, I will show you a playlist on Harvard's YouTube channel showing you just a smidgen of the programming that these the Jewish billionaires have been funding for years and years and years and years and years, that created this problem in the first place, and they were totally fine with all of it. But the minute that the students started protesting in favor of Hamas, and listen, I'm not pro-Palestine, I'm not pro-Israel, I'm not pro-Hamas, I am anti-war and anti-genocide. I know this is a crazy position to take, to say that I am not on the side of any foreign power at all. I just don't think we should be spending millions of dollars a year on war, or quite frankly, $3 billion a year to Israel for no good reason. I'm crazy like that. But I just find it a little bit funny that all of a sudden the big billionaire Jewish donors were really upset about what was going on college campuses when they turned a blind eye to it and in fact funded it for years and years and years and years and years. And when this is all over, they're going to go back to funding it because they have not yet put two and two together that their donations to these universities caused the problem in the goddamn first place. Anyway, the big Jewish donors have their panties in a twist. And because the big Jewish donors have their panties in a twist, the presidents of Harvard, of Penn, of MIT got dragged before Congress last week to answer for themselves. And apparently people didn't like the answers that they gave, and it's been all this hullabaloo since. Now the president of Penn has resigned. I don't really care, to be honest. Like my position on this is like, I don't think it makes a difference. The president of Penn is going to be replaced with someone that is just as bad. That's just the way it is. Do I think that we won anything by the president of the University of Pennsylvania resigning? No. No. And if you think that we have, you don't understand how it works, because the left still owns the left still owns the here are the wokest universities in the country in terms of like their faculty and their graduates in order of wokeness. Columbia is number one by a mile and a half. Now, Columbia, I think, got excused from this congressional testimony because they did a little mea culpa the week before and they started punishing some of the student groups on campus. So I think that they got excused from this testimony for like that reason. But Columbia is woke central number one of the most far left graduates, the most far left faculty members. The University of Pennsylvania is number two. I don't know exactly why that is. Probably its proximity to Columbia. It's like an hour, like less than an hour away. And then Harvard is number three, baby. That's just my opinion. This is just my opinion from watching an awful lot of this stuff. Columbia is light years ahead of everyone. That's because that's where the Frankfurt School kind of set up shop when they came over here in the 50s. Well, technically in the 30s, but really in earnest in the 50s. And then I don't know why the University of Pennsylvania attracts socialists. I think it's more of like the city of Philadelphia attracts a lot of them. There's a very big socialist presence there. So I think that has to do with it. And then Harvard, I think Harvard's going to Harvard. I think that's, pretty obvious what it is. But my point is that conservatives now have all their panties in a twist over this, and for the last 24 hours they've been really doing this like full court press of trying to get the president of Harvard to resign. And it was actually really good reporting. I have to give Rufo credit on this one. Chris Rufo and a couple other people worked together to put together this whole investigative report on the plagiarism of Harvard's president. Apparently Harvard's president, who's a black woman, obviously, apparently she plagiarized her dissertation. She's plagiarized several papers, and Rufo and his team of like fellows out of what is the name of his, I forget. I feel so bad now. I forget the name of the place that Rufo works for. He's a fellow of somewhere. Anyway, Rufo and his team of fellows, they actually did a really good job on this investigative journalism. So my hat is figuratively off to you. I can't take it off because I'm wearing headphones, but it is figuratively off for that because it was actually a really good report. They put together a lot of visuals to illustrate the plagiarism and all that. They did a great job. What they didn't understand, and I'm not going to go over that. If you want to go read that report, you can go read it. What they didn't do, though, is they didn't understand the monster that they were up against. Because apparently Harvard already knew about the plagiarism accusations. Apparently it wasn't even new information to them. And so the board already knew. The president refused to resign. The board refused to fire her. And so Harvard won. Harvard won. Out of this whole thing, after her testimony that we're going to watch today, after the plagiarism thing that Rufo and company unearthed and made a big viral mess of, Harvard won. Let me explain to you why Harvard won. For those who don't know, I spent about 10 years working in higher education. Actually, my first higher education job ever was at the Harvard Graduate School of Education. So I actually, because I went to school in Boston, I ended up working there over the summers and everything. So I know a thing or two about higher education. I've worked for many different colleges. I've done consulting for many different colleges. I did consulting for I worked at consulting agencies that were advising colleges, stuff like that. Let me explain to you why Harvard was always going to win this battle and will always win this battle. Number one, the left has a 70-year head start on all of this. 70 years is a long ass time. When you have a 70-year head start, you gain advantages and leverage that your opponents do not have. In the case of Harvard, though, it's actually even more than that. Because even Elon Musk himself was tweeting defund Harvard. Rufo was tweeting defund Harvard when the news came down that they were not going to fire the president. Everyone's like, defund Harvard. You morons, you can't defund Harvard. You can't. It is actually impossible. Do you want to know why? Because colleges, the elite colleges especially, have this little thing called an endowment. And Harvard has the biggest endowment on the planet. Harvard has, not million. Harvard has a 60 billion with a B, $billion endowment. An endowment is basically a giant I'm gonna really oversimplify something. An endowment is a giant stack of money that sits in a bank account somewhere, and basically that giant stack of $60 billion sits in a bank account, and then investments are made on that money with like a hedge fund sort of thing, where Harvard then takes the interest and the profits made off of the investments, and they use that to pay their operating expenses, to do scholarships, to do infrastructure, whatever it is. The point is that when you have an endowment, the core endowment never goes away. It always just stays there. And basically your operating expenses come off of the interest to the endowment. So they don't touch that endowment. They touch the interest. They do investments and stuff. They have people that manage that money. So the only money Harvard uses from that, and why the money keeps going up and up and up and up and up in the endowment, is they never touch that core foundation of money. So we're talking about a reality in which Harvard doesn't need anything from anyone. Harvard, well, Gloria, it's actually interesting that you say this, because when I was working in higher education, this is probably like 10 years ago or so, Harvard started giving full scholarships to everyone who needed student loans. So I've seen some conservatives saying, like, well, just take away their federal student loans. No one at Harvard has federal student loans. Literally, there are 0 students at Harvard that have federal student loans. Why? Because Harvard started giving every single student who was below a certain financial threshold basically full rides based on the $60 billion endowment. Exactly. You never touch the principle of the endowment. That always stays. You only take like the interest and the profits of like whatever the hell they're doing to invest it, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So there ain't nothing you can do to defund Harvard. There is nothing. I am sorry. Harvard is going to win, and they are going to win perpetually. And it's not even for that reason. Harvard also has massive real estate holdings in Boston, which is some of the most expensive real estate in the country. Harvard has patents. So like the elite universities, when things are invented at the elite universities, guess what? The university patents the invention. And then they get the profits from that. There are a million different revenue sources that Harvard has that has not. Harvard is a private school. People apparently think it's a public school. Harvard is not a public school. Harvard is a private school. So there are like they have it 19 ways from Sunday. And I'll tell you this, now people are saying, well, just don't hire Harvard graduates. Don't hire their graduates. We're going to tank their reputation. Well, that's never going to happen either, guys. Because you have to understand that the graduates of Harvard that are the elite of the elite, the bigwigs and all these fancy organizations, do you really think that Harvard alumni might have a little hissy fit here and there? But Bill Ackman's going to get hit, is going to get back in line eventually, because I'll tell you this, Harvard alumni and Penn alumni and MIT alumni and all the alumni of all the other Ivy Leagues, they are not going to ruin the reputations of their own institutions. Do you really think that all the Harvard graduates in the world that are part of these bigwig law firms and finance firms and all the other places, do you really think that the graduates of Harvard are going to stop hiring Harvard graduates because they're upset that the president copied a paper? That's not going to happen, guys. If the graduates of Harvard and all the other elite universities stopped hiring graduates of Harvard and all the other elite universities, they would tank their own degree value. It is not in their best interest to not hire these people. In fact, it is in their best interest to hire people, because the more people that Harvard hires, or that Harvard alums hire for these big time companies and law firms and all these fancy places, the value of their own degree goes up. So I'm sorry, but this is one of those instances where conservatives did not think this through. And I really hate to break the news to everyone, but it's like the idea that Harvard is going to be defunded is one of the most laughable things I've ever heard for anyone who understands how an endowment worked. But that doesn't mean we can't be entertained by the testimony anyway. We probably should watch it. We should probably do our due diligence. So today, guys, we are going to be watching the testimony of the college presidents, the testimony that forced out the president of Penn, and this is her right here. This is now the former university president at the University of Pennsylvania. Well, exposing them for what purpose? This is like, again, guys, for what purpose? For what purpose? This is where I really get pissed off at conservatives, because they're like, well, they still got exposed. So what? So what? So you own the libs for a day and a half? Do you know what this exposure is like? the great exposure of conservatives on Harvard and all the other elite institutions. This is like you guys firing a BB gun at an elephant and thinking you're going to kill the elephant with a BB gun. And then the elephant doesn't die with the BB gun, so you keep firing the BB gun at the elephant, and eventually the elephant is going to get annoyed at you, and eventually the elephant's going to fucking step on you. Like, can you guys please learn how to play chess? Should we just start a fucking chess club? Do I need to start a chess club? Honestly. Anyway, we're going to watch this testimony today and we're going to see what they said, and I'm going to talk about it and we can talk about it in the chat. Whatever. But before we get into that, I got a couple other things. Number one, as a reminder, I will be streaming at 9:30 tonight with Joshua for Nothing Remotely Controversial. Nothing Remotely Controversial is a lighthearted look at the news where we talk about news, and Joshua, who is a professional psychic in real life, pulls tarot cards and does astrology to help us kind of predict what's going to happen in the future. He gets a lot of stuff right. He predicted Hunter Biden was going to get indicted. I know that didn't come as a shock. I mean, it is kind of a shock, though. Hunter Biden's father is the president, so he essentially could have gotten out of it if he wanted to. But we're going to be doing that at 9:30 tonight. Kyle, this is stupid. I'm sorry. Like, if you guys want to spend the entire stream arguing with me, I will be more than happy to. I don't agree with this. It's like manufacturing on a quality demand product gets outsourced to another manufacturer. Quality tanks. The value of the old product goes up. No, Kyle. No. Do you want to know why this is stupid? Because Ivy League University alumni are not going to allow the value of their own degree to tank. That's not going to happen. Again, guys. There is no fucking universe in which the alumni of Harvard and Penn and Brown and Cornell and Yale and Princeton and MIT and the University of Chicago and any other ritzy fucking, well, MIT is not really an Ivy League university, but it's close enough. There is not any universe in which the alumni of these elite institutions are going to voluntarily tank the value of their own degree to own the libs. I know that your guys' priority is owning the libs at all time, and that's all you prioritize, and that's all you think about, and that's why you think you're going to win elections through memes. But there is no reality in which the graduates of elite universities are going to care about owning the libs more than they care about the value of their own degrees. That's not real. Sorry. Too bad, so sad. SNL did a skit about this testimony. I did see that. I did. All right, so we will be doing Nothing Remotely Controversial at 9:30 tonight. Couple other orders of business. Number one, if you have not yet, head over to the Unwoke art store to get your Christmas merch. Or holiday merch, I should say. Well, no, it's going to be Christmas now because, like, I can't do shipping overnight. But you still can get stuff in time for Christmas. There's lots of cool stuff in the Unwoke art store to choose from. I've got my dystopian collection here of all my dystopian movie posters. I'm actually going to be ordering some of that. Don't tell my husband. Oh, Rottweiler, I missed your super chat. I apologize. My B Rottweiler. And actually, Rottweiler, I'll get that before we go live. I want to do your super chat justice. I apologize for missing it, but I'll get it before we start the testimony. Sorry. We've also got the All Tears Are Tasty line. Just like the classic, the unrivaled All Tears Are Tasty tumbler. We've got the All Tears Are Tasty design and other stuff as well. This is my favorite design in the store right now, the Real Marxism design with Marx standing in a field of skulls, because real Marxism has been tried. That's all awesome stuff. Actually, Judy just got this one the other day. This shirt looks crazy cool. I've actually got it sitting right here. So this is the We're All Mad Here design. Anyway, lots of stuff in the Unwoke art store. You can still get stuff in time for Christmas if you're shopping for those last minute gifts. And of course, purchases in the Unwoke art store do go to support the work I'm doing, which I really appreciate. Other things I want to remind people of. Number one, well, that would be number two now, I guess. please make sure you are subscribed to my Substack, which is my main content hub on the internet. That is Carlyn, Karlyn, .substack.com. I am currently in the process of dripping out the clips from the National Sex Ed Conference that we infiltrated last week. Couple of interesting stuff. Last night I posted this clip. This is from one of the keynotes, and this was actually interesting because one of the keynotes at the National Sex Ed Conference is a woman who designed the comprehensive sex ed curriculum at this private school in Maryland called Holton Arms. Now, I heard a rumor that this is the private school that Christine Blasey Ford went to. I don't know if that's true, but I heard that rumor today. Anyway, so I published this story last night. We have the entire sex ed curriculum for this ritzy private school. And we know it's the private school because she didn't actually say where she worked in the presentation, but she did use the logo of the school in the presentation, which I thought was funny. She was trying to keep it under wraps about where she worked. She just said she worked for an independent girls' school in Maryland. Well, she put the logo though in the presentation. And then I think someone, and it might have been bought actually, sleuthed out. Maybe been bought, it may have been Starbright, actually. Maybe been Starbright. That it's the Holton Arms School, which is a private girls' school in Philadelphia for grades 3 through 12. So it starts in 3rd grade. And oh, there she is on their website. So we know it's her. And then she gave us their entire comprehensive sex ed curriculum, which starts in the 3rd grade. And what's interesting about it, and you can see these screenshots on the website, it's kind of harder to see them on the stream. In the lower school sex ed program, which is, again, I think it's 3rd through 5th grade, 3rd through 6th grade, something like that. They have an entire unit around equity and culture, an entire unit around becoming a social justice activist. When you get into middle school, they have more units on equity and culture and power and privilege. They also have units on gender and sexuality exploration. So this is what all these young girls are taking for sex ed in their ritzy private school. And then once you get into the high school curriculum, you have, let's see, microaggressions, implicit bias. They have a review of the LGBTQ spectrum. This is an entire unit on digital activism for social justice. And just to top it all off, they're going to learn about pornography in school. Yay. And if you look at this slide, look at this. This is socially just sexuality education because youth have sexual rights. It literally says that. Youth have sexual rights. Again, this is a school that starts in 3rd grade. They start sex education in 3rd grade because these girls right here on their homepage, they have sexual rights too. So you can find that exclusively on my Substack. You will not find this reporting anywhere else on the internet. You can also learn about the fake dicks that your schools are being sold by social justice queer activists to teach your daughters that they're actually boys. This is real. These are being sold to school psychologists. These are being sold to school nurses. And I know that because they talk about it in this here video. And guess what, guys? Not only do these fake dicks come in, they come in a couple of varieties. They come in silicone. The silicone fake dicks are just meant to be put in your pants to give the appearance of having a dick. It's so your daughters can try out what it's like to have a dick. But there's not just silicone varieties because there are also harder plastic varieties. So if your teenage daughters want to pretend to have a fake cock, to have sex, they can get one in like a harder plastic variety, which will not only allow them to get the feeling of what it's like to have a dick, but they'll also be able to have sex with it. These are being sold to your kids' school nurses, school psychologists right now. And I know that because I have them on video saying it. You know, it's funny, Brian, because they did also talk about using a sock. They did. They said if you can't afford the nicer fake dick, then you can use a sock. or you can use a condom apparently filled with water. I don't know why anyone would want to walk around with a condom filled with water all day in their pants, though. That just seems to be problematic for me. But a sock is an option. But if you have the extra money, or if you want to go to the school psychologist's office or the school nurse's office and pick one up, you too can have a fake dick in your kids' schools. Anyway, that's the type of stuff you'll find on my Substack that you won't find anywhere else. If you would like to support the work I'm doing and fund this work for next year, then please head over to the Substack and sign up for a membership for $8 a month, $80 a year. Members do get extra perks, including access to the full presentations from the National Sex Ed Conference, including 2 Zoom calls with me every single week, including access to the supporter Discord. Oh, they're being distributed in all schools, Renan. Yeah, any school that wants to pay to have them in the school nurses or the school psychologist's office. Yes. Yes. If you want to help me expose more of this stuff going on that no one else on the internet is doing, head over to the Substack, sign up for a membership, $8 a month, $80 a year. I can't do it without you. And guys, I am trying to hit 80 new supporters by the end of the year. That's 80. If I do not hit the 80 new supporters by the end of the year, then there's going to be some changes made to the Substack in 2024 until the supporter numbers get on track, because I am completely 100% funded by you guys. If you guys don't think my work is valuable, you don't have to fund it. No one's obligated to do anything. But if the work isn't being funded by something, I'm just going to stop doing it. Okay. So if you want to see me keep doing this stuff in 2024, then head over, pick up a membership. Again, I need 80 new members by the end of the year in order to keep me on track with the goals I need to hit in order to make this a financially viable operation. I really do appreciate it. And I really do hope we get to do more of this stuff in 2024, but it is entirely up to you guys whether or not I keep doing this stuff. So you let me know what you like, and we'll see. We'll see. Lastly, I just want to remind everyone that I do have this Substack that I don't talk about all that often. But that's actually a Substack that is about this show. And the reason I have this Substack is because YouTube doesn't send out notifications on my channel anymore. And I'm shadow banned and all that stuff. So if you want email updates when I'm going to go live for a show, it's not every single time, but it's like the vast majority of the time. What you do is you head over to thecult.substack.com. You can sign up. This is completely for free. And what happens is before I go live, I send out an email saying, here is what I'm talking about today. Here are the links that you can watch on YouTube, on Twitter, on Rumble. And that way we're trying to get around the system of basically YouTube not notifying people when I'm live. Apparently it is not enough that I go live at the same time every single day. People need these notifications. And so I will do my very best to have a workaround. If you want to get on the mailing list for that, again, this is completely free. And you can sign up over on thecult.substack.com. All right, guys, with all that out of the way, let's dig into our testimony. Oh, I wanted to show you this. Before we do that, one more thing. I wanted to show you this. This is a quickie. So if you go to Harvard University's YouTube channel and you just type in the search term queer, look what comes up. Harvard on their YouTube channel has a whole equity and justice playlist in which they have just a metric ton of equity and justice presentations that have happened at Harvard over the past several years. This goes back 6 years. And I'm sure this isn't every equity and justice presentation that's happened at Harvard over the past 6 years, but I'm just saying 4 unavailable videos are hidden. Oh, I wonder why that is, Harvard. I wonder why that is. Anyway. So I just wanted to show people that because it is, my point is this. It's like these universities aren't doing this stuff in secret. This is what we watch primarily on my channel. If anyone is surprised at what the universities are doing, they haven't done their own due diligence, because the universities are not doing this stuff in secret. They put all their content out there. This is why we spend so much time watching this content, because if you just listen to them, They will tell you exactly and precisely what they're doing. Anyway, let's dig into our testimony now. I just got to get the sound set up. And let's see what actually happened for ourselves. I also want to do a big shout out over to the people on Rumble. Hello, Zebra over on Rumble. Hello, JMPPE over on Rumble. Hope you guys are having a great day. All right, let's just start watching and we'll see how far we get.
Any member of the community experiencing hate.
Oh, I don't know why.
As president, I am committed to a safe, secure, and supportive educational environment so that our academic mission can thrive. It is crucial that ideas are exchanged and diverse views.
Rottweiler super chat, I forgot again. Oh no! I'm so sorry, Rottweiler. I'm so sorry. Okay. In hilarious news, the conservative Inc. Bud Light grift is dying now that Kid Rock and Dana White called it quits. Oh, did Kid Rock and Dana White decide they're no longer boycotting Bud Light? Guys, you think you're going to defund Harvard and you can't even commit to stop drinking Bud effing Light? Are you shitting me? Seriously? They gave up? They're like, guys, switching to another beer is just too hard. It's too hard, God. We can't do it. Bud Light, it is a shitty ass beer that no one should be drinking anyway. God damn, conservatives suck so badly. Thank you, Rottweiler. It was worth the wait. Kid Rock, didn't Kid Rock grift by like doing a video where he was like shooting Bud Light with a gun or something? Oh my God. If that's not like the most conservative thing ever, that they literally quit the Bud Light boycott, I just don't know what to say. I just don't know what to say. It's like, if you can't refrain from purchasing a shitty beer that no one should be drinking anyway, if that's just too much, I don't know what to say. Anyway.
Points are debated. As a student of constitutional democracy, I know that we need both safety and free expression for universities and ultimately democracy to thrive. In these times, these competing principles can be difficult to balance, but I am determined to get it right. And we must get this right. The stakes are too high. Penn would not be what it is without its strong Jewish community, past, present, and future. I am proud of this tradition and deeply troubled when members of our Jewish community share that their sense of belonging has been shaken. Under my leadership, we will never, ever shrink from our moral responsibility to combat anti-Semitism and educate all to recognize and reject hate. We will remain vigilant. I look forward to your questions.
Thank you, Ms. McGill. Dr. Nadel, you're recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Chairwoman Fox and Ranking Member Scott, for inviting me today. I'm Pamela Nadel. I'm a professor of Jewish history at American University, and I'm currently writing the book, Antisemitism, an American Tradition, supported by a National Endowment for the Humanities Public Scholar Award. And I'm delighted to be here today because this gives me an opportunity to thank Congress for sustaining through the NEH scholarship essential to understanding our nation's past. This is the third time I have testified about this topic before Congress. The first was in 2017, just 3 months after white supremacists chanting "Jews will not replace us" paraded through the University of Virginia, brandishing torchlights, echoing Nazi stormtroopers strutting through Germany in the 1930s. I emphasize this because the anti-Semitism igniting on campuses today is not new. It is part of a long history of American anti-Semitism. While anti-Semitism is difficult to define, historical examples convey some of its contours. Anti-Semites believe that Jews have been corrupted by money since Judas betrayed Jesus for 30 pieces of silver, and they've employed code names for avaricious Jews: Shylock, Rothschild, and in the 21st century, George Soros. Anti-Semites believe Jews conspire to destroy Christian Western civilization. These conspiracy theories
I didn't realize this was going to be comedy. Oh, this is going to be great, isn't it?
gained currency in the 1920s when Henry Ford's newspaper ran the series, The International Jew, the World's Foremost Problem. Today, the charge that the Jews are internationalists has been replaced by the dog whistle globalist, implying that Jews are the puppet masters of the worldwide order. Across American history, people from all walks of life have conveyed anti-Semitic ideas since 1654, when New Amsterdam Governor Peter...
You know, listen, I don't care if people are Jewish. It makes no difference to me at all. But I'm going to say this. An argument that I have heard the pro-Israel people make over and over and over and over and over again is that no one wants the Palestinians. No, why does no one want the Palestinians? No one want, like, the reason that we have to do this to the Palestinians is that no one wants them and they have nowhere to go and they've always been kicked out of every land. And why is it that no one wants the Palestinians? I've heard the pro-Zionist lobby make this argument over and over and over and over and over and over and over again. So I have to ask. This lady seems to be saying, anti-Semitism has always happened to the Jews. Everyone is against the Jews. Everyone hates the Jews. Anti-Semitism has always existed. Well, why is that then? To turn your own arguments around on you, why is it apparently that every culture, every country, every tycoon, all these people, like why is it? And again, I don't care if people are Jewish. It makes no difference to me at all. I just have to wonder why throughout all of human history, anti-Semitism has always been a problem. And again, I'm just turning their own arguments around on them because they've been saying for months, no one wants the Palestinians. Everyone hates the Palestinians. Do you think it's a coincidence that everyone hates the Palestinians? Okay, well, couldn't you say the same about the Jews? Again, I don't care if people are Jewish, makes no difference to me at all, just saying.
Stuyvesant tried to expel, and I quote, this deceitful race, such hateful enemies and blasphemers of the name of Christ. Now, more than 350 years later, we have just marked the 5th anniversary of the murders at Pittsburgh's Tree of Life Synagogue. On city streets, abuse is hurled at Orthodox Jews, and swastikas are graffitied on dorm doors and also at the State Department.
Orthodox Jews are not Zionists.
The long history of American anti-Semitism left its mark in higher education. Quotas on the admission of Jewish students began in the Ivy League in the 1920s and spread to more than 700 private colleges and universities. The campuses also wrestled with the challenge of anti-Semitic speech before this fall. In the early 1990s, Holocaust deniers took out full-page ads in college newspapers. Those ads launched furious debates about free speech on campus and also helped propel Holocaust.
For the record, I am totally sure and completely believe that the Holocaust happened in exactly the way it's been depicted throughout history. I just feel the need to say that because I feel like some things, the fact that I'm even watching this and possibly some things I'm going to say and possibly some people that I wouldn't say supported, but like have said Nick Fuentes isn't like an irredeemable human being. Like, I'm just saying that I think I'm positive and sure that the Holocaust happened exactly like these people say it happened. I'm sure that 6 million is a totally accurate number. Obviously, there is zero chance that any less than 6 million Jews died in the Holocaust. I completely believe all of that, and I just feel like I need to say that because potentially this stream could get stuff taken out of context. I don't know. I haven't talked to Alex in a really long time. I hope Alex is well. Did Alex say something to make you think that we're not on good terms? Because I haven't spoken to him in a long time, but I hope he's well. I've heard he's losing weight and looking good. I mean, good for him. I have no ill will towards him, so I don't know what's going on. Yes, we are normal people who believe the Holocaust happened exactly as it was depicted throughout all of history with no deviation. We are not socialists who don't believe socialism hasn't been tried. Exactly.
Courses into the university to respond to the disinformation. Anti-Israel invective has been flaring on campus well before this fall. I could look back more than 20 years. In October 2000, 200 students at the University of Michigan yelled, "Israel is a fascist state," and protested a Hillel teaching. But the
Well,
barbarity of the Hamas terror of October 7th adds a terrible new chapter to Jewish history. Anyone who claims to care about human rights should denounce these horrors. That so many on campus not only did not, but that they justified the savagery in name of opposition to Israel has caused Jews around the world deep anguish. While I deplore all hateful speech, anti-Semitic speech remains in America protected. Free speech stands at the core of the liberal arts education, an
yeah.
education which almost every member of Congress benefited from.
I mean, hate speech against any group is technically protected speech. Now, it might not be speech that you like, it might not be speech that you agree with, but it's not just anti-Semitic speech that's protected by the First Amendment. All hate speech is protected by the First Amendment. Again, I'm not condoning it, but guess what? Free speech only means something if you stand by it when people are saying things that you find repugnant. That's why the protections around speech exist. We would not need to protect speech if the only things that people ever said were things that other people found nice. The only speech that needs to be protected is speech that offends other people.
When they were students. But free speech does not permit harassment, discrimination, bias, threats,
It does
or violence
actually.
in
Well,
any
not
form.
violence or threats,
And when
but
they
it does
occur, our institutions,
permit
and not
bias.
just the campus, but our nation, they have in place mechanisms to respond. The American Jewish community has long strategized about how to reduce anti-Semitism. Their efforts received a stunning confirmation when the U.S. National Strategy to Counter Anti-Semitism was published. I believe this is the first time any nation has developed such a document. I urge Congress to do everything in its power to support the national strategy and also the forthcoming national strategy to counter Islamophobia. Thank you.
Thank you. Dr. Kornbluth, you're recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you. Chairwoman Fox, Ranking Member Scott, and distinguished members of the committee. Thank you for this opportunity to describe how MIT is fighting the scourge of anti-Semitism. My name is Sally Kornbluth. I have been president of
Oh my
MIT
God.
since January of this year. As an American, as a Jew, and as a human being, I abhor anti-Semitism, and my administration is combating it actively. Since October 7th, my campus communications have been crystal clear about the dangers of anti-Semitism and about the atrocity of the Hamas terror attack. Let me repeat what I said in my very first message to campus. In that video, I said, quote, "The brutality perpetrated on innocent civilians in Israel by terrorists from Hamas is horrifying. In my opinion, such a deliberate attack on civilians can never be justified," unquote. I also made clear that students were feeling unsafe because of their Jewish faith or their ties to Israel, and said, quote, "That should trouble every one of us deeply," unquote. I have reinforced this message, including in a November 14th campus video. As I said then, quote, "Anti-Semitism is real, and it is rising in the world. We cannot let it poison our community," unquote. I have been direct and unequivocal, and such leadership statements are important, but they must be paired with action. And this is just what we are doing at MIT. Months before October 7th, MIT joined the International Hillel Campus Climate Initiative, which helps universities build awareness of and actions against anti-Semitism. We have launched an MIT-wide effort called Standing Together Against Hate. It will emphasize both education and community building, especially in our residence halls. In addition to fighting anti-Semitism, it will address Islamophobia, also on the rise and also underreported. MIT will take on both, not lumped together, but with equal energy and in parallel. Importantly, as is clearly visible on campus, we have increased the police presence. Safety has been our primary concern. Nonetheless, I know some Israeli and Jewish students feel unsafe on campus as they bear the horror of the Hamas attacks and the history of anti-Semitism. These students have been pained by chants in recent demonstrations. I strongly believe that there is a difference between what we can say to each other, that is what we have a right to say, and what we should say as members of one community. Yet as president of MIT, in addition to my duties to keep the campus safe and to maintain the functioning of this national asset, I must at the same time ensure that we protect speech and viewpoint diversity for everyone. This is in keeping with the Institute's principles on free expression. Meeting those three goals is challenging, and the results can be terribly uncomfortable, but it is essential to how we operate in the United States. Those who want us to shut down protest language are in effect arguing for a speech code. But in practice, speech codes do not work. Problematic speech needs to be countered with other speech and with education. And we are doing that. However, the right to free speech does not extend to harassment, discrimination, or incitement to violence in our community. MIT policies are clear on this. To keep the campus functioning, we also have policies to regulate the time, manner, and place of demonstrations. Reports of student conduct that may violate our policies are handled through our faculty-led Committee on Discipline. Our campus actions to date have protected student safety, minimized disruptions to campus activities, and protected the right to free expression. We are intensifying our central efforts to combat anti-Semitism, the vital subject of this hearing. I note that I am also deeply concerned about the rise in prejudice against Arabs, Muslims, and Palestinians, nationally and in our community. And we are determined to combat that as well. We are also supporting faculty, staff, and student initiatives to counter hate. And thanks to an inspiring group of faculty members, we are seeing more discussion among students with conflicting views. We know there is further work to do, but we are seeing progress, and MIT's vital mission continues. Thank you. I'm happy to answer questions.
Thank you, Dr. Kornbluth. I'll begin the questioning of our witnesses. I'm going to ask members. Before I ask my questions, let me do some housekeeping. Under Committee Rule 9, we'll now question witnesses under the 5-minute rule. I remind members that I'll strictly enforce the 5-minute rule. So members are advised to keep your questions succinct so the witnesses have time to answer. Please don't talk for 4 minutes and then ask the witness a question. We've heard from many students that they do not feel safe. You've talked about that in your statements. But the anti-Semitism we've seen on your campuses didn't come out of nowhere. There are cultures at your institutions that foster it because you have faculty and students who hate Jews, hate Israel, and are comfortable apologizing for terror. How did your campuses get this way? What is it about the way that you hire faculty and approve curriculum that's allowing your campuses to be infected by this intellectual and moral rot? President Gay, I'm going to ask you to give me a brief answer. I also would invite you to follow up with more in writing, and we will follow up with you. So I will go down the line, President Gay, then President McGill, and President Kornbluth.
President Gay is Harvard. Harvard.
Thank you, Chairwoman Fox. Again, anti-Semitism has no place at Harvard. When we recruit faculty, we do so with the understanding that they are joining a community where we honor, celebrate, and nurture open discourse, both on the campus and in the classroom. And to be a successful teacher and educator at Harvard requires the ability to draw out all of the viewpoints and voices in your classroom, irrespective of one's political views. And we devote significant resources to training our faculty in that pedagogical skill and to
Thank you.
prioritizing that in our recruiting and hiring.
Thank you. Ms. McGill.
Thank you for the opportunity to address the question.
Penn.
I'm troubled by what you're reporting about the culture of the institutions that we're leading. Very contrary to the values that I hold as a leader of University of Pennsylvania, as well as the institution, where any form of hate is very contrary to our values. I would venture and answer Chairwoman Fox that anti-Semitism has a role in the broader society, and that's what we're seeing happening in the society and on our campuses. And I'm committed to combating it in immediate term and the long term.
Thank you. Dr. Kornbluth.
Yes, so MIT is a majority STEM education and research institution, and we are devoted to solving the problems that face society. Our faculty are hired for their brilliance. Now, we allow them to say what they'd like in the classroom in the name of free expression, but we are committed to having them know that that our campus must be a welcoming and inclusive environment. And although they may say what they like in the classroom academically, targeting any individual student, harassing or discriminating is strictly forbidden in our classrooms and on campus.
Thank you. We will be following up with asking for specific plans for disciplining student and faculty who assault or harass students or prevent them from accessing undisrupted classes or campus spaces. We'll be asking for your plan for preventing this rot from perpetuating, how you're going to hire and assess instructors, how will you change how you govern students, and what are the practical steps you will plan to take. I want to ask you one more question. As I've said, and Ms. McGill, I appreciate the fact that you feel concerned about my feeling about the fundamental culture on the campuses that's foundational to this issue, denial of the right of Israel to exist. So I want to ask each one of you, President Gay, do you believe that Israel has a right to exist as a Jewish nation?
I agree that the state of Israel has the right to exist.
Ms. McGill, same question.
I agree, Chairwoman Fox, the state of Israel has the right to exist.
Dr. Kornbluth.
Absolutely, Israel has the right to exist.
I want to thank our witnesses again for being here and to say we will follow up and to tell you that while we've talked about a larger culture out there, it's the universities who should be examples of what this nation is all about. I yield back and I recognize the distinguished ranking member who is wanting me to recognize Mr. Courtney.
Thank you, Chairwoman Fox. And I want to thank you for the moment of silence for the 137 hostages who are still being held to this day. We had a hearing a couple weeks ago on anti-Semitism where I shared with my colleagues and the witnesses that a dual U.S.-Israeli citizen with family in Waterford, Connecticut, was one of those being held at the time, and we thought her husband, her name was Liat Benin and Avi Benin. The good news is a week ago, Liat was released. And unfortunately, a day later, the Israeli military shared with the family that human remains, which were found at the kibbutz where the violent attack took place, unfortunately matched up to Aviv. Again, Hamas never shared the information about whether or not they had him or not, which is just another example of their treachery. Dr. Nadel, in your testimony on page 8, you talked about President Biden's U.S. national strategy to counter anti-Semitism, and in particular, you talked about the use of Title VI of the U.S. Civil Rights Act in terms of being an effective tool on campuses to combat anti-Semitism. I was wondering if you could talk about that a little bit.
So Title VI allows for responding to some of the issues that the presidents of these universities, but also, frankly, of most universities around the nation, it seems at the moment, have been dealing with in terms of when anti-Semitism moves beyond free speech, moves beyond rhetoric, and it involves harassment or intimidation. The issue is that the Office of Civil Rights and the Department of Education needs to be fully funded in order to implement the U.S. strategy to counter anti-Semitism. And I just want to comment about this strategy because it is an extraordinary document. It has actions for the White House to carry out, or that division, but it has issues for Congress to carry out, which I have a sense Congress has not been carrying out. And it also has major charges to whole of society to respond to anti-Semitism, some of which we are hearing is already happening on the campuses. The problem is they don't make headlines because they're not a bunch of protesters.
Thank you. And again, it's important to note that document was released back in May of 2023, certainly before this committee and the outrageous events of October 7th. And the ranking member mentioned in his opening remarks that, at the same time we're holding this hearing, we're also now still trying to get a budget passed for fiscal year 2024. The majority in the House reported out their budget, which, as he mentioned, carried a cut for the Office of Civil Rights. To be more specific, it's a 25% cut, $35 million out of their rather small budget, $72 million lower than what the president had asked for. We had a witness here again 2 weeks ago from who worked for almost 20 plus years at ADL, the Anti-Defamation League. They've been around for 110 years fighting anti-Semitism in this country. And again, she talked about the fact that, that type of cut is just going to cripple the ability of the anti-Semitism police, if you want to sort of look at it that way, in terms of trying to stop this type of activity on campuses. And again, I was just wondering if you had sort of what your view is of a cut in terms of the impact of the Office of Civil Rights to do its job. I
think the cut is absolutely devastating. And what I would also remind everyone is that the Office of Civil Rights in the Department of Education does not only focus on anti-Semitism, it focuses on all forms of hate. And I would guess, I actually tried to find this information, but was unable to do so. But I would guess that the majority of complaints are not coming from Jewish students, although maybe now, given what happened since October 7th, I would guess the majority of the complaints are actually coming from people of color and from others who have faced terrible bias. So it is unthinkable, unconscionable to make that cut.
Now, and talk is cheap. I've been around here a while. Budgets are what really, I think, show the true willingness to act in situations like this. And I'd just like to close by mentioning that in Connecticut, a young transfer student, international student from the West Bank, Tassin Ali Hamad, a sophomore at Trinity College. He was a math major who was up visiting friends in Burlington, Vermont. They were walking from going bowling, and this coward came out of his house with a firearm and at point blank range shot all three students who were they were going to a relative's house at the time. And it shows again that the civil rights effort of the Department of Justice, which also was being subjected to a potential cut, needs to get full funding in the Office of Civil Rights. And with that, I would yield back.
Thank you, Mr. Courtney. I now recognize Congressman Wilson from South Carolina for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Thank you, Chairwoman Virginia Fox. And Chairwoman Virginia Fox, I believe, appropriately began this hearing about how serious this is, that the Iran puppets of Hamas have victimized the world, including here in the United States. And it's shocking as we include people who have been affected. It should be Paul Kessler of California, who was murdered by a professor supporting Hamas as he was demonstrating.
I don't agree with calling for the genocide of any people. But I also don't believe that saying from the river to the sea is a call for genocide. I think it's a chant about the legitimate grievances of the Palestinian people. So I am anti-genocide when it comes to the Jews. I am anti-genocide when it comes to the Palestinians. But to say that a chant about being free is a call for genocide is a bit much for me. I'm just going to say.
Demonstrating peacefully on behalf of the people of Israel. And so we have victims right in our country of murder in California. With that in mind, and I say this respectfully to each of the university professors here today, without any explanation, I would like the answer, and it should be a percentage of conservatives. And that is, you each rightfully promote diversity and inclusion of race and gender with percentages available. That is available at your universities. What is the percentage of conservative professors at your institutions? I only want to know the percent of conservatives. What is the number?
I would bet all the money in my bank account that you didn't even know what that word meant a couple months ago.
Dr. President Gay.
Thank you, Congressman. So I can't provide you that statistic because it's not data that we collect, but I will say that we try to draw our talent to Harvard from.
And hey, we've got to race ahead, please. I want more. I just want to know, what is the percentage of conservative professors at Harvard?
I do not have that statistic.
Very
we don't
few.
collect that data.
Me. And President McGill, what are the percentage of conservative professors allowed to teach at your institution?
Representative, I strongly believe in a wide variety of perspectives. We do not track that information, so I can't give that to you.
Okay, no, none. I got the message. And President Kornbluth, what is the percentage of conservative professors at MIT?
We do not document people's political views, but conservatives are welcome to teach on our campus.
And I think this is so sadly and shamefully revealing that there's no diversity and inclusion of intellectual thought. And the result of that is anti-Semitism. And you can study with government money all you want to, doctor, but it's due to illiberalism that has taken over the country. And you might look into that when you get your next government grant. With that in mind, the barbaric mass murder on October 7th by Iran puppets Hamas invading Israel, trained by war criminal Putin, has shockingly revealed that many college campuses are sickeningly anti-Semitic. This is defending the maniacal Hamas agenda. The Hamas agenda is in their covenant of August 1988. I hope you read it because it says in Article 7, I'll take you, you don't have to read the whole thing, kill the Jews. What that means is death to Israel, death to America. And to have that presented is disgusting. Sadly, college campuses have descended from coveted citadels intellectual freedom to illiberal sewers of intolerance and bigotry. Diversity and inclusion are a George Orwell 1984 implementation, as we see, excluding conservative thought. The solution for closed-minded intolerance on campuses is obvious. To liberate academia from denial of free speech, respecting the First Amendment, there should be diversity and inclusion of more conservative academics overcoming today's blatant discrimination. With that in mind, Dr. McGill, I've received questions from really wonderful students at the University of Pennsylvania who are in a state of shock about the state of the university. And you say the university has introduced a plan to combat anti-Semitism. Yet we hear of more incitement and intimidation of Jewish students at Penn. Do you understand that having policies means nothing if you don't implement them? And how many students or faculty have been removed or disciplined under your policies? What is the average time for action?
See, I was thinking exactly the same thing. When he was doing that whole rant about diversity, I was like, bro, shut the fuck up. Shut up right now. Because like here we are having a stupid conservative trying to play their game saying DEI would be legitimate if it included conservatives. I was thinking, it's just like, it's so goddamn performative, and you know this guy doesn't have any clue of what he's talking about, and his staff doesn't have any clue of what they're talking about, which is why he doesn't know. It's just like, this is the best conservatives have? Really?
On student conduct or other policies, conclude, you can get this back to me later. What are you enforcing? At a pro-Hamas Penn protest, President Huda Fakhrudin and faculty member Ahmad al-Mala were seen enthusiastically clapping in support of the speaker as he shouted, "Go back to Moscow, Brooklyn, blanking Berlin, where you came from," end of quote. Has any action been taken to address Professor Fakhrudin and Professor Ahmad al-Mala's support of this insightful and intimidating speech? How are Jewish students in Fakhrudin's classes supposed to receive fair treatment when she endorses hatred? And I'll introduce that. And also, I'm going to conclude by another question. How in the world can y'all now have a class on resistance literature from pre-Islamic Arabia featuring a person who is with the terrorist organization PFLF? We'll present this to you. Thank you.
We go from Mr. Wilson from South Carolina to Ms. Wilson from Florida.
Thank you. Thank you, Chairman Fox and Ranking Member Scott. And thank you to the witnesses for your testimonies today.
What an outfit.
As the witnesses have shared, anti-Semitism anywhere is abhorrent and unacceptable and must be condemned. I'm privileged to represent a strong, united Jewish community in South Florida. My next door neighbor is a rabbi. My Jewish constituents have experienced everything from bomb threats on Jewish centers, schools, to harassment of Jewish community members. I stand with them. We talk often, we commiserate, and we pray. We must take a stand against all forms of hate, whether that be anti-Semitism, Islamophobia, racism, xenophobia, and terrorism. This must stop. In Congress for 7 years, I led the fight against Boko Haram, a terrorist group that kidnapped over 300 schoolgirls in Nigeria, gang rapes, beheadings, killing whole families. So I am particularly sensitive to this issue of terrorists and what they do. But disagreements about the conflict in the Middle East should never escalate to threats of violence against any community. We are a civilized society. We must draw a line and condemn hate. Please know that in May, the Biden-Harris administration introduced the U.S. National Strategy to Counter Anti-Semitism, a comprehensive approach addressing anti-Semitism in diverse environments, including college campuses.
What is the question?
With that, I have a few questions.
Thank God.
Ms. Nadell, based on your knowledge from 2016 to 2020, what has been the United States response to anti-Semitic events? I'm specifically thinking about Charlottesville, Unite the Right, and what the Trump-Pence administration did compared to this administration. Ms. Nadell.
The Unite the Right rally at the University of Virginia and in Charlottesville, Virginia in August of 2017 was for me, and I believe actually for the majority of American Jews, a major turning point. It signaled that the long history of anti-Semitism in the United States, that it was about to burst out again. And for the first time ever that I know of, Jews who were worshiping in their synagogues, in a synagogue on Saturday morning, and they watched some of those Unite the Right ralliers parade past the synagogue armed, and they had to sneak out of the back of the synagogue because they were afraid that violence would break out. So what we are seeing in terms of anti-Semitism in this moment in time is that it's been rising and rising since 2016. And although President Trump called the people who were the protesters and counter-protesters, said there were very good people on both sides, I disagree. I do not think there were very good people on both sides.
Oh, that's very, very stunning and brave of her. But what I think is even more stunning and brave is that she's conflating the anti-Semitism of the right, which, I mean, listen, there are a lot of people on the right who don't like the Jews. There are. Let's just acknowledge it. But she's conflating that with what's been going on college campuses, and what the right was doing in Charlottesville has absolutely nothing to do with the indoctrination and social justice bullshit that has gone on college campuses to cause the college students to take the side of Hamas. These are two completely different things. If anything, Charlottesville was a backlash to what has gone on at the universities for decades to create the far left college students that were protesting and are protesting in favor of Hamas. These are two different groups, but there's no acknowledgement that these are two completely different groups doing what they're doing for two completely different reasons. College campuses did not incubate the Charlottesville people. The Charlottesville people were a backlash to what has gone on college campuses.
In Charlottesville in August 2017.
Okay, as I reflected, Professor Nadell, on the horrific events in the Middle East and the subsequent fallout on college campuses, I have been in contact with my friend and former congressional colleague, Ted Deutsch, who now heads the American Jewish Committee. The committee is the author of the AJC Action Plan, a toolkit for university administrators. One of the recommendations is that the university administrators recenter the conversation about the Middle East back to a place of fact-based exchange. Could you comment on why this suggestion is important? And I'd like to, Madam Chair, enter this report into the record.
Without objection.
This action is important because the campuses where faculty who come from Middle East studies and faculty who come from Jewish studies have long been in conversation, not just since October 7th, those are the places where what we do in the university has been manifested in the best way. So I'm thinking, for example, of Dartmouth University, where they held a forum and they had, in their second forum, 300 people in the room, and they had...
I used to work at Dartmouth. It's not Dartmouth University, it's Dartmouth College. They're very sensitive to that, I'm just saying.
5,000 people online. Our universities not only educate our students today, but we can educate the wider public. And so I very much agree. I admire Ted Deutsch, and I admire the American Jewish Committee for what they are trying to do. But this is not a magic bullet. It's not going to be fixed overnight. But we are in the process of working on it and hopefully tamping down anti-Semitism in America once again.
Your time is
Thank you, and I yield back.
Mr. Thompson, you're recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chair, for calling this important hearing. Thanks today to all of our folks who are testifying. As we've all seen in recent weeks, there's been a sharp rise in anti-Semitic words, actions, and attacks online around the world, and unfortunately, right here at home. Nowhere in the United States have these hateful and divisive ideas been more prevalent or found a safer home than on college campuses. It is up to all of us to call out these actions and protect Jewish faculty, students, staff at these institutions. Unfortunately, many of our university leaders have not met this moment and have allowed anti-Semitism to continue to grow and to rear its ugly head. President McGill, does the University of Pennsylvania have in place any policies to ensure that each student who is enrolled at the university receives information on the history of anti-Semitism, how anti-Semitism presents itself, and action students can take to prevent and report anti-Semitic behavior, and if, why or why not?
Thank you for the opportunity to discuss that. We are in the midst of making certain that all anti-bigotry efforts ensure education about anti-Semitism. We committed to that into September, and we're working through that. We've added education. Some parts of our program do, and some parts of our program need to be enhanced. So we're working on that right now, and I assure you that we will make certain that that is included in all of our anti-bigotry efforts, anti-Semitism.
That is much appreciated. I wonder if that type of education would have been in place at all of our college campuses before this, whether we would have seen the massive reactions that we have that are just hard to describe and justify in terms of the demonstrations and just the hate. And as part of the recent protests on and around campus, there have been dozens of arrests made by university police, including several related terroristic threats. Does university plan on requiring students, faculty, or staff arrested as part of these protests to receive further education on anti-Semitic behavior?
Congressman, is that a question for me?
Yeah, it is.
They're going
I'm
to send them to a
sorry, please.
re-education camp?
Well, we're very committed to making sure everyone understands history and anti-Semitism for sure. The description of the arrests, I'd need to learn a little bit more about.
Well, the requests that have occurred, obviously, related to protests involving faculty or staff, students. The question is, within the consequences, when university police are the ones that are intervening, whether there's any thoughts to further education for those individuals regarding anti-Semitic behavior and the impacts of it.
It's certainly consistent with my perspective and my values and the institution's values. I wonder if I could follow up with your team about the specifics of these arrests, because I don't know exactly what you're speaking about, but I agree with you that anyone who was arrested for an activity that was anti-Semitic, some act or something else, harassment, intimidation, should certainly receive education in addition to other consequences, in my opinion.
Sure, some criminal activity they were arrested for that was obviously driven by anti-Semitic beliefs and expressions. Several faculty members at Penn recently provided support for the boycott, divestment, and sanctions, or the BDS movement. The movement requires boycotting Israeli universities and individuals who are complicit in what they consider Israeli government misconduct. Therefore, it is impossible for a faculty member to support BDS and treat Israeli academics fairly. Can you tell this committee unequivocally that no such discrimination has taken place?
What?
I appreciate the opportunity to clarify a very clear position that the University of Pennsylvania has had for many years, which is we strongly oppose boycotting, divesting, and sanctioning Israel. We have many flourishing it's contrary to academic freedom, among other things. It's singling out one state and treating it differently than others. We have many academic collaborations with universities in Israel. They're terrific collaborations. We're very clear on BDS. We are opposed to it, and our practices make that clear.
So
Hang on. I'm not on board with this whole BDS thing, mostly because I don't think I don't think this stuff works, and so I don't usually even give it much consideration at all. But you're telling me that conservatives are literally demanding that Harvard be defunded right now because they didn't fire the university president that they wanted them to fire. So how can you possibly justify demanding that Harvard and all these other schools be defunded and their graduates are boycotted and all of this stuff? How can that be okay? But this BDS thing with Israel is not okay. And again, I don't support either. I think that both are stupid. So this isn't, I'm saying like I'm in favor of one, not the other. I'm in favor of both. I don't care. But like, it doesn't make any sense to me that it's perfectly fine to do it to an American university, but it is not fine to do it in regards to like protesting things that you don't like that the government of Israel is doing? Am I way off base here? What is the difference?
Part of that, and I'm a strong supporter of the right to free speech, including on college campuses.
That doesn't seem likely.
Does University of Pennsylvania have any policies or procedures in place to ensure that BDS supporters cannot implement their boycott positions in their official capacities or not given such individuals administrative powers to begin with?
Well, it's the position of the institution that we do not engage in boycotting, sanctioning, or divesting. And I would think that would follow for any member of the organization who is acting in their official capacity. But if you have specifics that I could follow up on after this hearing, I would very much like to hear them.
We'll do that. Appreciate it. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Ms. Bonamici, you're recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you to the witnesses. I appreciate the full committee's focus on this issue. I want to reiterate, as I did in the other hearing we had recently, that anti-Semitism, as well as Islamophobia and other forms of bigotry based on race, ethnicity, national origin, or religion are abhorrent and must not be tolerated. I'm deeply troubled by recent anti-Semitic incidents at colleges and universities across the country, including those whose presidents are here today. And I stand with my colleagues on both sides of the aisle in calling for proactive steps from all of these institutions of higher education to root out discrimination, hatred, and bigotry in all of its forms. I also want to note that the main point of this hearing should be to identify bipartisan solutions to combat anti-Semitism, not an excuse to attack higher education, liberal arts education, or important diversity, equity, and inclusion work that's happening at colleges and universities across the country.
Really?
There are legitimate concerns about anti-Semitism on college campuses, and that's what we should focus on today. Not doing so is a disservice to the students across the country who are looking to Congress for support for and the public for the institutions. So during the previous hearing, I highlighted my support for additional funding for the Department of Education's Office of Civil Rights, and I want to join Representative Courtney in repeating that request today. OCR will be better able to enforce Title VI violations and protect students' civil rights with adequate staff and investigatory capacity. So I want to make that clear. We must do that. Dr. Nadel, thank you for being here and for your work over the years. Public colleges and universities, as we know, must uphold constitutional free speech rights. And many private institutions also recognize the value of free speech and robust debate. I think all of our presidents recognize that today, but also with the understanding that schools cannot allow their campuses to become places where anti-Semitic speech makes students unsafe or feel unsafe. I think that's recognized. So, Dr. Nadel, what are some of the best ways that colleges and universities can work to make their campuses welcome, safe, and inclusive spaces for all students in light of incidences of hate speech and discrimination, while also adhering to First Amendment principles?
So thank you for the question. I think there are different forms and different venues for expanding this discussion of the very difficult issue that has sparked and ignited the anti-Semitism or the outbursts on college campuses that we've been seeing since October 7th. So one form obviously is the classroom, although I would remind the members of the committee that the reality is that most students during their college career, they take a handful of courses. Many of them are studying STEM, and most of them are actually never in classrooms where they're hearing a discussion of issues like anti-Semitism or the conflict in Israel and Palestine. So that's the first thing that I would point out. So we academics can continue to foster those conversations, and we need to take them outside of the classroom. I think the other place where there can really be a lot of work done that would be very successful is on the side of student life on campus. And so student organizations are, they range broadly and widely on the campus, everything from a gardening club to obviously some of the student organizations that have been involved in the protests against Israel. So these are other places.
I don't want to cut you off, but I have to get another question in. I'm running out of time, but thank you
Okay.
for your work. And I also want to recognize as well the AJC
This is
Action
such a
Plan for
farce.
confronting campus
This is
anti-Semitism.
they're not
President Gay, I
asking
understand that there's an ongoing investigation of your institution by OCR because of anti-Semitic incidents that occurred on campus. And I know we'll be closely monitoring the outcome, but in the interim and over the long term,
What can Congress do to support your institution and other colleges in preventing discrimination? And also, if you could also respond in the brief time, you mentioned that Harvard will not permit speech that incites violence or threatens safety. And I'd like you also to address who decides that and how and in what time frame.
Well, that's a good question.
Thank you, Congresswoman, for your questions. You're correct that there is an ongoing investigation, and obviously I can't comment on an active investigation other than to say we will work with the office to answer all of their questions. And I will say the work of the office is vitally important for ensuring students have access to educational opportunities. So I fully support the work that they do and hope that the office gets the resources that it needs to be effective. With respect to I believe the question was about student conduct. So again, we are deeply committed to free expression, but when speech crosses over into conduct that violates
Hang on. Breaking news. Breaking news. I just finished a shawl. This takes priority. My knitting takes priority, okay? This is a giant ass shawl. I knit it with knitting needles that were too big, and so it got really giant. And so let me show you. It's a big triangle. It's a giant triangle. And it's reversible. Hang on. And now I'm going to make tassels. So that's all. Mount the like button for me. Let's resume.
Policies against bullying, harassment, intimidation, we do take action. And we do have faculty-led student disciplinary processes that are quite robust. And even over the last couple of months, as there have been incidents, we've been leaning into those processes, and we do have disciplinary actions underway.
Thank you. My time has expired. I yield back.
I now recognize Mr. Wahlberg for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And thanks to the panel for being here. These are difficult times and difficult subjects, but they need to be addressed because leadership matters.
Yes, it is.
And you are leaders
Wool.
in academia, at your institutions as well. And leadership matters. President Gay, I was taken by some words in your opening statement where you said, cure for anti-Semitism is knowledge. I would go where angels fear to tread and suggest that it might be better going back to the original motto idea for Harvard, which was Veritas, truth, that the cure for anti-Semitism is not simply knowledge, it's truth. Knowledge puffs up. Knowledge sometimes is based upon falsehoods. I think that's what we're facing right now in the climate on campuses, is that we're missing the fact of truth and allowing, under the guise of free speech, knowledge
Guise of free speech
that isn't true to be exhibited in actions as well. So President Gay, in the weeks since October 7th, and again in your testimony, you have said that Harvard's commitment to free speech extends to views that are objectionable or outrageous. Are you aware that Harvard is ranked dead last on the 2024 Foundation of Individual Rights and Expression scorecard of universities on freedom of speech?
Free speech is not a fucking guise.
Thank you, Congressman, for the question. Respectfully, I disagree with that perspective as represented in the report that you cited. I don't think it's an accurate representation of how Harvard treats speech on campus. We are committed to free expression and to making space for a wide range of views and perspectives on our campus.
With all due respect, let me move on a bit.
Bedrock.
I would expect that you wouldn't agree with that. I understand that. And I would expect that the University of Penn same would be true, that you wouldn't agree that you're second to last on that same scorecard. But President Gay, did you know that 70% of Harvard students say that shouting down a speaker is acceptable?
That is not okay.
I appreciate that. It seems that perhaps Harvard's commitment to free speech is pretty selective. As you are no doubt aware, prominent alumnus Bill Ackman tweeted you a letter on Sunday, and in that letter, and I have that tweet, I guess that's the beauty of social media, you can get those things. In that letter, he highlighted 2 cases of Harvard faculty members who were canceled because of views deemed too controversial for your campus. Tyler J. Vanderweel was deemed guilty for those crimes related to his views on marriage and abortion. And then Carol Hoven, an evolutionary biologist, was forced to resign because she stated that a person's sex is biological and binary. Mr. Ackerman's letter also included quotes from a number of faculty highlighting the culture of fear that pervades Harvard's campus for those with views out of step with campus orthodoxy. And so, President Gay, in what world is a call for violence against Jews protected speech, but a belief that sex is biological and binary isn't?
Thank you for your question. So from the moment that our students arrive on campus, whether it is to begin their Harvard journey as an undergraduate or at one of the professional schools, the message to them is clear, that we are an inclusive community, but one deeply committed to free expression. And that means that we have expectations that that right is exercised mindfully and with empathy towards others. We reinforce that during their time at Harvard by helping them build the skills that allow them to engage in constructive dialogue, even on the most complex and divisive issues. Because what we seek is not simply free expression, but the reasoned dialogue that leads to truth and discovery, and that does the work of moving us all forward. We don't always get it right, and our students don't always get it right. And when they transgress, they're held accountable.
Well, don't they? Your professors come under that as well, don't they?
Absolutely.
And so for Professor Vanderweel and Hoven, that didn't work for them. The free expression of views, at the very least, views, whether fact or truth, I guess we'll leave that to understanding, but nonetheless, they were removed from their positions. And I think that sends a message in this case with Jewish students, that they're less importance. I yield back.
Mr. Chicano, you're recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you to our witnesses for being here. I do wish we could meet under different circumstances. President Gay, many individuals hold that Harvard did not condemn the attack against Israel swiftly enough. And I'd like to give you an opportunity to briefly react. Can you tell us why the university did not react as quickly as other universities might have, or others might have hoped Harvard would have?
Thank you, Congressman, for the question. And respectfully, the notion that Harvard did not react is not correct. From the moment I learned of the attacks on October 7th, I was focused on action to ensure that our students were supported and safe. On that first day, we were focused on identifying whether we had any students or faculty who were in Israel and needed our assistance, including in getting out. On October 8th, I joined students and other members of the Jewish community at Harvard Hillel for a solidarity dinner to be there in support and also to learn more what their needs were. In the days after, not only did I condemn the attacks, I've continued to condemn the attacks, and furthermore, have continued to stay in conversation with our Jewish community on campus about their evolving needs so that to ensure that the university is providing them with the support that they need during this very challenging time.
Thank you, President Gay. Do you consider yourself a subject matter expert on anti-Semitic behavior?
Excuse me, could you repeat that question?
Do you consider yourself an expert on anti-Semitic behavior, subject matter expert?
No, I don't. But I know this, that anti-Semitism is hate or suspicion of Jews. And that is all I need to know to take action to address it on our campus.
Thank you. Real quickly, other than Professor Nadal, do other witnesses consider themselves to be experts on anti-Semitism? Just a simple yes or no.
No, I do not.
No, I do not, but I learn.
Thank you. Well, my point is that this is the second legislative hearing on this topic in a month, and the majority has failed to bring forth any witnesses who can speak on how to address this issue and how to take concrete steps to combat anti-Semitism.
I would just like to thank all proponents of ad blockers for stealing money from my content that I provide you for free for hours every single week. Thanks so much for stealing money from me when you use ad blockers. I appreciate it.
President Gay, it is my understanding that you have communicated to the Harvard community some of the specific steps you are implementing to combat anti-Semitism and continue to foster student and community engagement. You've already mentioned a few of the things that you've done since September 8th, but can you highlight some of these steps?
Thank you for the question. So I've had repeated communications with the campus community about the steps that we're taking, both immediate steps and longer-term action towards combating anti-Semitism. To begin, we've focused on enhancing the physical safety of the campus and the campus community.
Thank you, Cody, for becoming a member of the channel. I really do appreciate it. I am unimpressed by them too, Sin. We're doing our due diligence, though. Also, I'm making tassels, all right? You can do a craft. Well, Sandy, part of the way I make money on YouTube, a very small part because so many people use fucking ad blockers, is through ads. And so, yes, when you guys are using ad blockers, you are stealing money from people whose content you're consuming. And by the way, guys, and this is just a side note, but like, why do you think you get so many ads on YouTube? You get so many ads on YouTube because of people obfuscating the fucking ads. Anyway.
That includes an increased police presence, both plainclothes and uniformed officers, 24/7 threat monitoring, both on campus and online, coordination on a daily basis with state, local, and federal law enforcement. And when necessary, we've taken the steps of closing the gates to Harvard Yard to limit the ability of outside actors to use our campus as a platform. We've also made it easier for students or any community member to report concerns and any kind of conduct that is threatening. We've also enhanced counseling and mental health services, including trauma-informed care. We've created community spaces so that students and faculty and staff can gather and to be together to process the tragedy. We're also working on...
Excuse me, President Gay, thank you. Are these actions only intended to assist Jewish students?
These are resources that we're making broadly available to our community, but we're being particularly mindful to make sure that they are responsive to the needs of our Jewish community, as well as our Muslim, Arab, and Palestinian students who are also experiencing tremendous grief and are also fearful and distraught during this time.
But President Gay, universities stand as centers of thought, and it is of the utmost importance to strike a balance between First Amendment speech protections and the safety of students and faculty. But when speech crosses into the line of conduct, it's essential that universities act swiftly. Harvard is a private university, and private IHEs have different parameters to operate under than public IHEs. Does this give Harvard a pass to avoid protecting free speech?
We are deeply committed to protecting free expression, even of views that we find objectionable and outrageous and offensive. But when that expression crosses into conduct that violates our policies around bullying, harassment, intimidation, threats, we take action, and we do not hesitate to take action.
Thank you. My time is up, and I yield back to the chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chicano. Mr. Grossman, you're recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you. I'm going to follow up on some of the things Mr. Wilson had to say. Just playing around here a little bit on the internet, in 2016, they found about 2% of the faculty of Harvard were viewed President Trump, I think, as okay or good. And I think in the 2020 election, the Crimson, your local paper there, found 1% of the students voting for Donald Trump, which given that nationwide is about 50-50, was kind of shocking. Does it concern you at all that you apparently have a great deal, a lack of ideological diversity at Harvard? And do you think that atmosphere is maybe one of the reasons why there seems to be such an outbreak of anti-Semitism at your institution?
Is that question for me?
That's the question for you. Yeah. And I'll ask you, what are you going to do about it? Do you think it's a concern?
So we strive to have as diverse a faculty as we can, because we want to make sure that we are sampling from the broadest pool of talent available in the world. That's how we ensure academic excellence.
From what I read here, maybe they're making stuff up, but I don't think they're making it up. We said 2% of your faculty viewed Donald Trump as something other poor in 2016, and after 4 years of working for diversity, 1% voted for him. Now, I know all sorts of good people who don't like President Trump, but I'm just saying, when you compare the way people think at your campus compared to America as a whole, if there's one thing you are, it's not diverse, right? Well, do you consider that a problem, or the numbers I gave you?
So, Congressman, I can't speak to the specific data that you are referring to. What I can say is that at Harvard, we try to create as much space as possible for a wide range of views and perspectives, because we believe that allows for a thriving academic community.
How in the world is that even possible? And that you're trying to do that? Do you really feel that your faculty are ideologically diverse? You came out of a political science background at Stanford?
At Stanford, as an undergraduate, I was an economics major, and then for my PhD, it was a PhD in political science.
Political science, that's what I thought. Did you experience what you would say, given America's divided now 50-50, about 50-50, or was it 75-25 or 90-10 regarding to more a constitutional conservative perspective or more of a left-wing perspective? What is your experience both at Harvard and Stanford?
So here's what I can say on the topic that you're exploring. And it's, we want the most brilliant, talented faculty to come to Harvard and to build their careers there.
They're only giving me 5. You're not going to answer the question. They only give me 5 minutes. Is it common at Harvard to ask faculty to submit a diversity statement?
That's a practice that varies across schools at Harvard.
So sometimes you do. Well,
in some cases, there are schools that ask for that.
Okay. Could a scientist ever get cut from consideration from a job because they had the wrong view of diversity?
What I would say is that we aim to draw to our faculty the broadest pool of talent.
When you hear that, and this is not the way I wanted this to go, but when you hear that 1% of your faculty voted for a presidential candidate who got about 50% of the vote nationwide, does that concern you, or do you feel you're not as diverse as you should be?
What I'm focused on is making sure that we're bringing the most academically talented faculty to our campus, and that they are effective in the classroom.
I'll give you one more question, because I want to go to the gal from Penn. Has Harvard ever made a faculty job contingent on a strong diversity statement?
Yeah.
We look at everything a faculty member will bring to 100%. Our campus. Academic brilliance and excitement and ability to teach a campus community and student community.
Now I want to go to Ms. McGill. I have a friend whose son goes to the University of Pennsylvania. Right now, he is physically afraid to go to the library at night. Okay, just unbelievable.
By the way, I'll say this. It is actually illegal for a university to hinge hiring a person based on a diversity statement. And it's always been illegal. They've been violating this law for years. The way that employment law works, and for people who don't know, I'm an organizational psychologist. I have some experience in this. The way that employment law works is that you cannot hinge a hiring decision for any position on something that has nothing to do with the core competencies required for that position. So that line of questioning was actually legitimate, and he should have pushed that more, because that is actually illegal in every single state in this country right now. But they won't, because they don't know that.
Could you, I mean, I just can't even conceive that's going on in the United States of America, but that's what she tells me. She doesn't make it up. Could you give us your reasons as to why that is true at Pennsylvania, why today a Jewish student is afraid to walk to the library at night?
Congressman, let me start by saying I'm devastated to hear that, and the safety and security of our campus and our students in particular is my top concern. I would, if you would be willing, I would like to talk to your constituent and their Penn student. I'm very troubled by what you're reporting. It's our top priority to keep our students safe and secure.
I'm going to have to ask you to follow up on that with Mr. Grossman and with the rest of the committee. Ms. Adams, you're recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair, and thank you to the witnesses for coming today and to testify before the committee. But before I get started, I want to just thank you for your service to students and to the university community.
Come on, that's a good hat.
Dr. Nadell, this question is for you. I'm glad, first of all, to see another Buckeye here, Ohio State. But as a former professor at a small college in North Carolina, Bennett College, for over 40 years I taught there, I am deeply disappointed by the rise of anti-Semitism rhetoric that's happening across the country. Anti-Semitism has no place on our college campuses or anywhere. And it's been my mission to combat instances of anti-Semitism and hate and racism alike. There are Jewish students across this country that are afraid to leave their dorms, afraid to step on campus because of the hateful rhetoric that's infiltrated our schools. So this question is to actually all the presidents, but I did want Dr. Nadell to answer first. Students should be able to express their views and opinions without fear of retaliation. How are you balancing the protection of free speech, academic freedom, with the need to also oppose normalizing anti-Semitism attitudes that are radical and dangerous? And if we could just briefly answer that, I want to hear from the presidents on this.
Sure. So just briefly, obviously, we need to protect free speech, but we also need to protect the safety of our students on campus. And you use the word normalizing anti-Semitism. And the problem is anti-Semitism has been normalized in the nation, not just on campus.
Thank you.
Giant tassel.
Dr. Gay?
Thank you. I'd say education is the key here. Making students and frankly the entire campus community more aware of the insidiousness of anti-Semitism so that they're in a position to be able to recognize anti-Semitic tropes when they see them and confront them in the moment.
Thank you.
I appreciate the question. At Penn, our policies are guided by the U.S. Constitution. So our longstanding open expression guidelines follow the Constitution. I think in addition to education, which I agree with, so that students and faculty and staff can identify and combat anti-Semitic tropes in speech, I think it's important to call out anti-Semitism in a very visible and public way and a specific way in order to make clear how it's contrary to the values of the institution, where we're talking about speech alone.
Thank you. So Title VI provisions set the standard for what should be done to address racism, hate crimes, and violence on campuses. Do you think that your DEI departments are equipped with the tools to combat anti-Semitism or hate on your campus? And if not, what changes do you plan to make?
This is so boring. I was expecting fireworks. I was told they were anti-Semites.
I can jump in here.
Yes.
Yes. So our diversity, equity, and inclusion staff are absolutely charged with making the campus welcoming for all students. And that absolutely includes our Jewish and Israeli students. We absolutely see anti-Semitism as an inclusion issue. We're making sure that our staff who are dedicated to diversity, equity, and inclusion are being trained about anti-Semitism, but it goes well beyond that staff. It's important that our leadership understands anti-Semitism, that our students and faculty understand anti-Semitism. And I'll just say one thing about MIT. We can make as many top-down initiatives as we want, but the heartening thing is that the discussion of anti-Semitism and indeed Islamophobia is now proceeding at a grassroots level.
So
at
can we hear
MIT.
from, thank you very much. Next president.
Our anti-bigotry efforts are also informed by a desire to make certain every person at the university feels welcome and can thrive. And that includes communities of faith and ethnicity. That's the value we have, and we're making sure that is from the top of the organization all through the organization. And I believe over the longer term, that's sort of an immediate action. Over the longer term, making sure the entire community is discussing, understanding, and capable of calling out and combating anti-Semitism when they see it.
Thank you, Madam President.
Our DEI office is a resource for the entire community, and the professionals in that office are committed to ensuring that everyone feels a sense of belonging. But in building on an observation that President Kornbluth made, this is a shared responsibility that doesn't vest strictly in the hands of our DEI professionals, but it really is work that needs to be taken up by the entire community, the leadership for sure, but also the faculty and the students, and also doing the work.
Thank you very much. I'm out of time, Madam Chair. I yield back.
Thank you. Ms. Stefanik, you're recognized for 5 minutes.
Oh, this one's
Dr. Gay, a
fiery.
Harvard student calling for the mass murder of African Americans is not protected free speech at Harvard, correct?
Here we go.
Our commitment to
It's a
free
yes or no
speech-
question. Is that corrected? Is that okay for students to call for the mass murder of African Americans at Harvard? Is that protected free speech?
Our commitment to free speech.
It's a yes or no
extends-
question. Let me ask you this. You are president of Harvard, so I assume you're familiar with the term intifada, correct?
I've heard that term, yes.
And you understand that the use of the term intifada in the context of the Israeli-Arab conflict is indeed a call for violent armed resistance against the state of Israel, including violence against civilians and the genocide of Jews. Are you aware of that?
That type of hateful speech is personally abhorrent to me.
And there have been multiple marches at Harvard with students chanting, quote, "There is only one solution, intifada revolution," and, quote, "globalize the intifada." Is that correct?
I've heard that thoughtless, reckless, and hateful language on our campus, yes.
So based upon your testimony, you understand that this call for intifada is to commit genocide against the Jewish people in Israel and globally, correct?
I will say again, that type of hateful speech is personally abhorrent to me.
Do you believe that type of hateful speech is contrary to Harvard's code of conduct, or is it allowed at Harvard?
It is at odds with the values of Harvard.
Can you
But
not
our
say here that
values
it is against the
also-
code of conduct at Harvard?
We embrace a commitment to free expression, even of views that are objectionable, offensive, hateful. It's when that speech crosses into conduct that violates our policies against bullying, harassment,
Does that
and
speech not
intimidation.
cross that barrier? Does that speech not call for the genocide of Jews and the elimination of Israel?
When that
You
speech-
testify that you understand that is the definition of intifada. Is that speech according to the code of conduct or not?
We embrace a commitment to free expression and give a wide berth to free expression, even of views that are objectionable.
You and I
outrageous,
both know
and
that's not the
offensive.
case. You were aware that Harvard ranked dead last when it came to free speech. Are you not aware of that report?
Hang on.
As I observed,
Are you shitting me? Is this the classic conservative move of like, we're going to call out your hypocrisy? Is that what I'm seeing here? This is what people are so upset over? This is like, listen, man. Conservatives are so fucking stupid. Honestly and sincerely. Listen. Like, Wasn't it like half an hour ago that conservatives were all screaming about their rights to free speech on college campuses, rights to free, and now they're throwing all that out the window for speech that they disagree with, and they have the fucking gall to come out while they themselves are being hypocritical to say, well, you allow free speech we don't like, and so now we're gonna nail your ass to the wall for like you like embrace it. Like, it's like, what the fuck? Or maybe it's really more like, you censor speech we like, so now we're going to censor your speech. That's what it actually is. Isn't it true, President of Harvard, that you have censored speech that we don't like in the past? And so now you're not censoring this speech? It's like, my God, I thought better of them. Right-wing reactionary conservatives who are so feckless. Like, good. You know what? Good. I am glad conservatives got their ass kicked by Harvard this week. I'm glad. Conservatives goddamn well deserve to have their asses kicked by Harvard this week. If this is the argument, if this is what people have been all up in arms about all fucking week.
Earlier, I reject that characterization.
It's the data shows it's true. And isn't it true that Harvard previously rescinded multiple offers of admissions for applicants and accepted freshmen for sharing offensive memes, racist statements, sometimes as young as 16 years old? Did Harvard not rescind those offers of admission?
That long predates my time as president.
But you
so
understand that Harvard made that decision to rescind those offers of admission.
I have no reason to contradict the facts as you present them.
Correct, because it's a fact. You're also aware that a Winthrop House faculty dean was let go over who he chose to legally represent, correct? That was while you were dean.
That is an incorrect characterization of what transpired.
What's the characterization?
I'm not going to get into details about a personnel matter.
Well, let me ask you this. Will admissions offers be rescinded or any disciplinary action be taken against students or applicants who say, from the river to the sea or Intifada, advocating for the murder of Jews?
As I've said, that type of hateful, reckless, offensive speech is personally abhorrent to me.
Today that no action will be taken. What action will be taken?
When speech crosses into conduct that violates our policies, including policies against bullying, harassment, or intimidation, we take action, and we have robust disciplinary processes that allow us to hold individuals accountable.
What action has been taken against students who are harassing and calling for the genocide of Jews on Harvard's campus?
I can assure you we have robust
What actions have been taken? I'm not asking.
Actions underway.
I'm asking what actions have been taken against those students.
Given students' rights to privacy and our obligations under FERPA, I will not say more about any specific cases other than to reiterate that processes are ongoing.
Do you know what the #1 hate crime in America is?
I know that over the last couple of months, there has been an alarming rise of anti-Semitism, which I understand is the critical topic that we are here to discuss.
That's correct. It is anti-Jewish hate crimes. And Harvard ranks the lowest when it comes to protecting Jewish students. This is why I've called for your resignation. And your testimony today, not being able to answer with moral clarity, speaks volumes. I yield back.
Gentlewoman yields back. Mr. Norcross is not here. Ms. Jayapal, you're recognized for 5 minutes.
Oh, this should be good.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The Anti-Defamation League found that reports of anti-Semitism have nearly quadrupled since this point last year, and we're seeing that reflected on college campuses, with Jewish students reporting that they feel unsafe. No student should feel unsafe. I think we all agree. Anti-Semitism and indeed all forms of hate have to be rejected everywhere. And while all of you as college administrators have a responsibility to condemn hate and acts of hate in all its forms, including anti-Semitism, I know that you also face the challenge of and the responsibility of ensuring that people can engage in healthy debates of ideas in a way that fosters safety and inclusion for everyone. So I want to thank you for your commitments to work to ensure a continued diversity of perspectives on your campuses, a diversity of faculty with varied lived experiences. I know that my Republican colleagues have been trying to attack DEI initiatives, including the funding for those initiatives, for some time. And I hope that that is clear in terms of some of the comments that have been made. I want to just give Dr. Gay 30 seconds to respond to anything, given the line of questioning that you had right before, in case you wanted to say anything before I go to my lines of question.
Thank you for the opportunity, but I'm satisfied that I've conveyed our deep commitment to free expression, recognizing that it's uncomfortable.
Thank you, Dr. Gay. Dr. Kornbluth, your institution is one of many that has responded to incidents between pro-Israel and pro-Palestine groups. Many college campuses have been grappling with their responses to prevent anti-Semitism, to prevent Islamophobia and other forms of hate, while also making sure that every student feels safe to express their thoughts in accordance with the principles of free speech and to engage in the idea of critical thought on college campuses, which I think is what many of us appreciated about our college experiences. Can you speak to the challenges that you've faced in condemning hate and acts of hate while making sure that students were heard? And also just want to appreciate the distinction that you made in one of your comments between what we can say and what we should say. And just say that, frankly, I think there's been an explosion, thanks to the previous president in part, that has shattered the norms of what is acceptable to say. And we're dealing with some of the effects of that. But what challenges have you faced in condemning hate and acts of hate while making sure students were heard?
Thank you so much. And I have to say—
And if you can just pull that microphone right up to you, that would be great.
I'm sorry, thank you. I have to say my absolute goal is to ensure the safety of students and the continuity of our research and educational missions. And these recent events have troubled me deeply, and we have mobilized as a campus. I think the most important thing is first knowledge, to understand that, as I mentioned in a previous answer, that our leadership, our students, and our faculty have to have knowledge. But way more importantly right now is these students are thrown together in classrooms, in laboratories, in dormitories every day. This is where the dialogue is taking place. And we have to ensure that they have the tools for constructive communication across differences. We are bringing these discussions.
Hang on, this is a deeply important question in the chat, since I have just finished making one of my tassels, because it's a giant ass fucking tassel. Here, let me get my... And do I make pom-poms or just tassels? I can make pom-poms. Making pom-poms, though, is a giant pain in the ass and requires even more yarn than making a giant tassel. And so I prefer tassels. But I can make pom-poms if I need to.
To the dormitories. We have a Center for Constructive Engagement, where the students are going to be able to have small roundtable discussions with each other. We have funded and mobilized, and I cannot tell you how wonderful our faculty have been. They've just issued a statement from 300 faculty about unity and working together with the students. And so there have been lunches, there have been meetings for our Israeli and Jewish students with Jewish faculty, for our Arab and Muslim students with Arab and Muslim faculty, but now they're working to figure out how to bring them together. If we're all going to live and work together productively, we have to move beyond, formal training, which we are committed to, but to actual real dialogue and to actually model constructive and civil dialogue for our students. That's what being in university is all about.
Very powerful. Professor Nadel, these challenges of protecting free speech while denouncing anti-Semitism, Islamophobia, all forms of hate, that's not unique to MIT or to the institutions that are here. Can you speak to the same question of the most effective ways to facilitate education and dialogue to ease tensions at other colleges and in general?
the most effective ways, and obviously I very much appreciate your question, because this is happening across the United States on colleges and campuses, small and large. And the most effective ways are to recognize the many different levels and mechanisms for facilitating these dialogues at the student level, at the faculty level, at the administrative level, and bringing how to unite the campus, bringing the campus together. That's what we're all trying to do, and it doesn't happen overnight.
Thank you all so much for your work. I yield back, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Mr. Allen, you're recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I want to thank each of you for being here today. And first, my colleague earlier asked the question, what is the truth? Of course, that question was asked 2,000 years ago of Pilate.
Oh my God.
And of course, obviously knowledge is important, but what about wisdom? In full disclosure, I am a student and believe in the God of the Bible and his word. In the House of Representatives, we're without excuse. We have above the American flag, "In God We Trust." Really? And then we have the full face of Moses looking down on the entire body, who gave us the first 5 books of the Bible. Let me tell you how serious this issue is. In 1885 BC, not AD, BC, the Bible says, Genesis 12:3, I will bless, talking about Israel, I will bless those who bless you, and whoever curses you, I will curse. And all peoples of the earth will be blessed through you. That is a serious, serious promise. In fact, we heard one of the panelists talk about the Jesus of the Bible. And of course, our church was founded by Jesus, who was a Jew, the American church. In fact, the church throughout the world. This is the Committee of Education and Workforce. Illiteracy is the #1 problem in our workforce. But I think from a standpoint of truth, biblical illiteracy is the #1 problem in America.
What?
We are a biblically illiterate society. We have no idea.
God. Seriously?
About these promises that are ancient, and this book that the prophecies, every one of them, has come to fruition. Every single one of them.
We're in the apocalypse right
So with that,
now.
Dr. McGill, like so many others, I've been extremely disappointed. I'm sorry, Dr. Kornbluth. Kornbluth, is that correct? Okay.
Kornbluth.
At MIT, Israeli and Jewish students were blocked from attending class by pro-Palestinian protests at the school's main entrance. The protests violated campus rules when the school ordered all protesters to leave the area or face suspension. The contingent Jewish counter-protesters left. The pro-Palestinians stayed. Can you explain how that is fair to Jewish American citizens whose rights are being violated when you said because we later heard serious concerns about collateral consequences for students, such as visas and that sort of thing? Can you explain yourself there?
Yes, thank you very much for the opportunity. I have to say, when we started this protest, when the protest was started, I ordered a police presence to ensure safety, and we de-escalated when it was prudent. In a very tense situation among students, we avoided altercations and we kept everyone safe. And we are now entering into a process of ensuring accountability. Now, with respect to the consequences, we strive for outcomes that are proportional to the transgression. In this case, violation of our time, place, and manner rules for demonstration. I want to make one comment, though, about people attending classes. First of all, at no time.
Well, I'm limited on time here, so could you submit that to us in writing?
Absolutely.
I have another question here. In fact, going back to talking about wisdom, Proverbs 9:10 says, the fear of God is the beginning of wisdom. And so with that, President Gay and President McGill, do either of you plan to suspend foreign students who violate the law or school policies?
Thank you for your question. Our international students are a vibrant part of our community and contribute significantly to Harvard's strength and are a real source of pride. But all of our students, irrespective of their citizenship, are held accountable to following our policies, including our policies around bullying, harassment, and intimidation. And we hold them accountable for that.
Okay, well, Dr. McGill, if you'll submit those in writing, and I have a few other questions I'd like for y'all to answer. Thank you for being here. And
Yes, sir.
Chair,
Thank you, Mr. Allen. Ms. Wild, you're recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I so wish that this hearing was one where we were having a robust intellectual discussion, taking advantage of the brilliant minds that we have in front of us about free speech, the limits of free speech, and so forth. I fear that we have gotten away from that. I think the one thing that everybody in this room would agree on is that not all speech is protected or acceptable. For example,
well, there's a
when
difference
elected
between
officials
protected and
lie,
acceptable, isn't there?
that's unacceptable. And that sometimes means that they have to be removed from academic institutions where they may serve on boards, or in the case of Harvard, the Senior Advisory Committee, based on false claims of election fraud. But moving on to the subject of this hearing, let me just say, as a Jewish mother of 2 students who are now fully launched, and I had to send off to college not so many years ago, I am very, very sympathetic to the concerns of the students and the parents about their safety, emotionally, physically, and otherwise. But it's not just about anti-Semitism. It's about all forms of hate speech, whether it's anti-LGBT, Islamophobia, whatever it is, racist language. Our students deserve a place of safety, and again, emotionally and physically. But at the same time, I think of college as the place where we learn to think critically. And to me, that's the
would think
most important part of going to college. So here we are in this strange balancing act, and believe me, I feel for all of you, because it is a balancing act that you have to perform. So at what point do we determine, or do you determine, that speech is such that it incites violence or it constitutes hate speech? And I'm going to ask President McGill from my home state of Pennsylvania. You saw a video at the beginning of this, and to the extent that the protests at Penn were referenced, did you see that video as an example of hate speech or speech that would incite violence?
I appreciate the question from the representative from the great Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. I mean, that video, just as a human being, was very hard to watch. The chanting, I think, calling for Intifada global revolution, very, very disturbing. And I can imagine many people's reaction to that would be one of fear. So I believe at a minimum that is hateful speech that has been and should be condemned. Whether it rises to the level of incitement to violence under the policies that Penn and the city of Philadelphia follow, which are guided by the United States Constitution, I think is a much more difficult question. The incitement to violence is a very narrow category.
So let me just ask you there.
Exactly.
If you became aware that a similar protest or rally, or whatever you call it, was going to be occurring on your campus tonight or tomorrow, how would you respond? What would your approach be?
Well, our approach with all rallies, vigils, and protests is that our public safety officers and something called open expression observers are present at all of them. We have a longstanding open expression policy that makes sure our open expression policies are followed. So I would make sure that those people were there. The
our public safety officers usually try to speak to the organizers of the conference and talk to them about what our rules are about protests. I'm sorry, I think I said conference, about protests.
Can I just stop you? Because
Yes,
as
please.
you know, these are really short hearings. Were any actions taken to shut down the protest? I think it was Sunday night, Saturday night, whichever night it was.
The Philadelphia police, their what's called their civil action division was the lead on this. And no, I think they were there to make sure there was no incitement to violence and no violence. I don't think any actions were taken.
Would you agree that your, in this case, Jewish students undoubtedly felt very uncomfortable following that?
I'm sure that's true, yes.
And I'm sure you've heard from many of them and their parents as well.
Yes, yes. And there were acts associated with that protest which were defacing some buildings, which clearly would unquestionably be a criminal action, and the police are trying to determine who did that.
Thank you. Unfortunately, as usual, my time has expired, but I hope we can continue this conversation in another format.
Thank you.
I want to ask our members to be very careful about the words they use about our colleagues. We don't want to engage in personalities, and so I'm going to ask our members to hold themselves to a higher standard. I now recognize Mr. Banks.
Ms. McGill, just weeks before the October 7 terror attacks against Israel, Penn hosted a Palestine Rights Literature Festival.
Seriously?
The event featured Mark Lamont Hill, who was fired by CNN for calling for the destruction of Israel.
Mark Lamont Hill is a socialist. Mark Lamont Hill spoke at the socialism conference. Mark Lamont Hill owns a socialist bookstore in Chicago. I'm just saying, he's also really short. When I was undercover at the socialism conference, I was like walking right behind him and Bettina Love. Bettina Love is this psycho education professor from Columbia. Bettina Love is like a head taller than Mark Lamont Hill. It was so I was like trying to hide. Anyway. Yeah, Mark Lamont Hill's a socialist.
It also hosted and included a member of the Palestinian Youth Movement, which has collaborated with anti-Israel terrorists and...
But, even though Mark Lamont Hill is a socialist, they're allowed to support Palestinian rights. It is not like, listen, man, if you think that it's anti-Semitic to support Palestinian rights, then you are literally granting Israel permission to, I'm sorry, genocide an entire people just because they feel like it, because it's anti-Semitic if you support Palestinian rights. That makes no goddamn sense.
maybe most notably Roger Waters, the really wacky former Pink Floyd vocalist. The same Roger Waters, by the way, who's publicly used anti-Jewish slurs, desecrated the memory of Anne Frank, and has dressed up as a Nazi and floated a pig balloon with the Star of David at many of his concerts. Why in the world would you host someone like that on your college campus to speak at the so-called Palestinian Rights Literature Festival?
I appreciate the opportunity to discuss this. Anti-Semitism has no place at Penn.
Why did you invite Roger Waters? What did you think you would get out of him?
Anti-Semitism has no place at Penn, and our free speech policies are guided by the United States Constitution.
Why did you invite Roger Waters?
Good answers. Correct answer.
And do you,
Anti-Semitism does not have a place at Penn. And
you condemn what Roger Waters stands for?
Congressman, prior to the event, I issued a statement calling out the anti-Semitism of some of the speakers at that conference.
Specifically Roger Waters. Yes or no?
Roger Waters is among them.
So
yes.
you specifically called out a guy who floated pig balloons with the Star of David at his concerts.
I called out
I haven't seen the condemnation. I'm going to go look for it after this hearing. And I hope I can find that well-recorded condemnation from you.
I did call out the anti-Semitism of some of the speakers at a conference that had more than 100 people.
In the aftermath of the Palestinian Rights Festival, you and your board chairman wrote a memo outlining Penn's free speech policies. You said, quote, Penn does not regulate the content of speech or symbolic behavior. You wrote, including speech, quote, incompatible with the school's values. You went on to say that Penn does not have a policy against hate speech because, quote, defining and policing robust debate, even with respect to the most disturbing issues, is unwise. That's what you wrote.
True.
But in 2013, Penn canceled now Prime Minister Modi's scheduled keynote address at a Wharton-hosted economic forum in the face of opposition from Indian American professors. And for the past year, your administration has sought to punish Amy Wax, a tenured law professor, for her stance on DEI and identity issues. And then you canceled an event with former ICE director Tom Holman due to disruptive student protest simply because he worked for former President Donald Trump. Ms. McGill, the fact is that Penn regulates speech that it doesn't like. Everyone gets this. No one more than the faculty and students who know exactly where the lines are that they're okay to cross. Why did Penn let Professor Ahmad Amala off the hook, who led hundreds of students in chanting, "There's only one solution, Intifada revolution"? Why does that professor still have a job at your university?
Representative, our approach to speech is as I identified. It follows and is guided.
Why didn't these hearings happen before the Israel-Palestine shit kicked off? Why were none of these conservative representatives concerned about this shit far before? This is my big problem with this entire thing. Because it's not as though no one knew what was going on college campuses. They just didn't care enough to do anything about it until fucking Israel was involved. That's my big problem.
By the United States Constitution, which allows for robust perspectives. I disagree with the characterization that we treat speech differently. And I can't discuss any individual disciplinary proceeding.
The same goes for Penn professor Ann Norton, who's repeatedly denied Hamas's worst atrocities on October 7. Or how about Huda Fakhreddin, who romanticized the murder of over 1,000 Israeli Jews as, quote, Palestine inventing a new way of life, and clapped as a speaker said Jews should go back to Berlin and Moscow. Why does that professor still have a job at your university?
I'm very troubled by what you're describing, Congressman. That kind of...
You're speaking out of both sides of your mouth. You're defending it. You allow these professors to teach at your college. You create a safe haven for this type of anti-Semitic behavior. You said something earlier about anti-Semitism being symbolic of the larger society. Your university is a hotbed of it. And one of the reasons that we're seeing a rise of anti-Semitism.
They're also a hotbed of all other socialist bullshit. Sophie Lewis, our favorite abolish the family socialist, works at the University of Pennsylvania. But we're not hearing anything about that. We're not hearing... The University of Pennsylvania has like 9,000 of these like little academics. Maybe not 9,000, but they've got a lot of them. They've got a lot of these little academic centers that are all run by socialists, all doing socialist things, all pumping out socialist content, all pumping out socialist fucking papers. Why aren't we talking about that?
Anti-Semitism and an unsafe environment for Jewish college students all over this country. You're largely responsible for it. With that, Madam Chair, I yield back.
Thank you, Mr. Norcross. You're recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman, and certainly for holding this hearing on an incredibly important subject that has
One more
been thrust
tassel to go.
upon us or should I say, has been
This is now just
rethrust.
Carlin's
This is an
tassel-making
issue
stream.
that has been before our country and our world for quite some time. But the one thing I do want to state before I go into my questioning is the idea of making this a partisan issue is disgusting. This issue has nothing to do with being on a
What
red
do you
or
want to
blue
make a
team.
t-shirt, John?
This is an American issue in terms
What
of what we're
specifically?
facing on our campuses and shouldn't be taken under the light of a partisan issue. That being given, I do have
Tassels
some
are a top
questions,
priority.
particularly for the University of
Maybe.
Pennsylvania and its president, who is within a couple thousand yards of my district.
Do I have anything to show Mark Lamont Hill at the Socialism Conference? I mean, I have his entire panel recorded. I recorded the whole thing. There was some stuff he said, but like in listening back to it, I was kind of like, this isn't really, maybe I should go back and listen again. But no, you can go to the Socialism Conference website and look him up as a speaker. Like he was a speaker at the Socialism Conference. Sophie fucking No, I will not besmirch Sophie like that.
I'm going to start with back during August, Penn announced plans to host the Palestinian Rights Festival that was going to be held in September. And given that the ADL identified many of the speakers, I believe the number was 25, as anti-Semitic, this continued to happen. The idea of what happened during that event, after the event, and as much as last night, as I was traveling down here to see what is still happening in and around the campus, is extremely disturbing given the atrocities that have happened in the Middle East. So, Dr. McGill, did you have the power to stop this event?
Under our approach to academic freedom and free expression, Congressman, we have probably thousands of speakers to campus every single year. Many of them I disagree with. I don't cancel or censor them in advance of their arrival to campus.
So anytime you use the word censor, so any event on your campus, you would never interfere for the fear of censoring somebody. Is that what you're suggesting?
Well, Congressman, we are, of course, always concerned about safety and security, so that could be a constraint we would be worrying about in thinking about an event. It's a very rare occasion.
So there would be times that you would stop an event under the terms of censoring if you, under your opinion or those advising you, say there would be a security issue.
Well, our approach is not to censor based on the content, but to worry about things like the safety and security and the time, place, and manner in which the event would occur.
So, given what happened in October, you could not see ahead that was going to happen, but the idea that groups coming on that are clearly identified as anti-Semitic would be of a concern.
Talking about Palestinian rights is not anti-Semitic. And honestly, I honestly find these continued insinuations by conservatives that talking about anything related to Palestinian rights or this or that or whatever, anytime they say that talking about Palestinian rights is anti-Semitic, I actually find that to be far more offensive than anything the college presidents have said so far. I don't like the college presidents. I don't support the college presidents. I didn't support the college presidents before October 7th. I want all fucking higher education to be abolished. I've always wanted that. But if I don't want it to be abolished specifically for the reason that they deem acceptable, which is supporters of Palestinian rights, then all of a sudden I'm anti-Semitic. It's like some of us didn't just discover this issue with the colleges yesterday, is all I'm saying.
I was concerned about the anti-Semitism of some of the speakers at that conference, and also the timing of that conference was particularly painful because it occurred during the holiest time of the Jewish year. And that's why, in advance of the conference, while saying that we are committed to academic freedom and free expression, and the conference would go on, I specifically condemned the anti-Semitism of some of the speakers.
Condemning, but you would have the power to stop it if, in your opinion, there was a security issue.
Well, Congressman, whether there is a security issue is something that I leave to our public safety individuals, and I defer to their judgments on those matters.
Did you ask them?
We discussed the security and safety of every large conference that happens on our campus. And yes, we did talk about this one.
And they, in their opinion, along with you, decided that there were no security issues by the nature of you allowed this to continue.
We did not believe, we believed we were ready for any security concerns that might arise. So yes, it went ahead.
In hindsight, do you think that was a proper decision?
I think canceling that conference would have been very inconsistent with academic freedom and free expression, despite the fact that the views of some of the people who came to that conference I find very, very objectionable because of their anti-Semitism.
Would you permit your academic department to sponsor a conference?
Elisa over on Rumble, supporting Palestinian rights is not threatening bodily harm to anyone. For effing real, conservatives. Get a conservatives, speech is not violence. Speech you don't like is not. I feel like I just had to have this conversation with the left like 15 minutes ago. Speech is not violence. If you don't like the speech, then confront the speech with better fucking ideas. And if you can't do that, continuing to lie about what people believe is way more offensive to me than a college president not canceling an event based on speech at the event that some people, big donors to the university, find abhorrent.
Of 25 speakers that the NAACP would identify as racist?
Congressman, we follow our policies always, and our policies are guided by the United States Constitution and a commitment to academic freedom and free expression.
So is that a yes or no answer?
The answer is that we follow our policies.
I'll yield back.
Mr. Owens, you're recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you. Let me just start off by saying, being raised in the 60s, days of segregation, this is truly deja vu. One thing that I did learn through my growth of the years is that hate is not passed down our genes. It's taught or untaught. What we're seeing here is hate being perpetuated. We keep people segregated, keep them from building bridges of trust, never allowing them to find commonality. Teach them that everything that's gone.
Well, they are. Of course they are, Trendlin, but it's a shitty argument to make because what they should be doing is saying all events should be allowed. But that's not what they're doing. What they're saying is, why didn't you cancel this event that we didn't like? Because you canceled, here's what they're saying. You canceled that event that we liked, and therefore you should cancel this event that we don't like. If they were saying, why aren't all events allowed? Why aren't we supporting free speech for everyone? But that's not what they're saying. They're saying, you should have canceled this event because we don't like it. There's a difference between those two. And yeah, the only reason that they're even having a realization that there's a problem in the first place is because of the big-time Jewish donors who are pulling their checks.
Wrong in their life is because of somebody else's actions. Then teach them to look at our differences, our color, creed, and culture. And then teach them to judge each other. It's dehumanizing. It robs people of individuality. But the end game, if it is hate, it is very effective. We teach one race, all minorities, that they are oppressed. Do DEI, we then teach another race, whites and Jews, that they are oppressors. The result is hatred, segregation, the inability for our children to see evil when it's present. One of my Democratic colleagues was asked recently about the use of strategy by Hamas to rape Jewish women and children, girls and women. as terror. Her response was not to defend these women against these evil men, but that she wanted to discuss hierarchical oppression. That is DEI. It's a failure to protect Jewish communities across our country at your universities. Let me just say this also. October 7th was a very different day in our lifetime. And yet, every single time we're talking about anti-Semitism, we some kind of way drift off into every other sense of racism. We're talking about 1,200 lives, babies being burned, beheaded, hostages, and yet we cannot stay focused on anti-Semitism. I just remember a couple of years ago when we were dealing with Black Lives Matter, try to talk
There were
about
no
Blue
babies
Lives
beheaded.
Matter, Jew Lives Matter, Arab Lives Matter, and you'd be called a racist.
That was debunked.
It's time for us to focus on what's happening on your campuses. And it might sound flowery, all the ideas of what your values might be, but those values are not being translated to our kids. You're seeing them in the streets every single day. MIT, we heard from a university student here that DEI official liked on the most posts on their media, a post calling President Biden a liar for saying that Hamas have beheaded babies. She also posted a saying that Israel doesn't have the right to exist.
That was debunked. That was debunked 19 ways over. So yeah, she was right. Sorry. Even the Biden administration admitted they weren't telling the truth. God damn it.
Legitimate settler colony like the United States. I have a question regarding this idea of segregation, Dr. Gay. Harvard is now have graduations for Black-only graduates, Hispanic-only graduates, and gay-only graduates. How does that bring us together as opposed to dividing us based on color, creed, and all the other things? And by the way, is it okay for a white group to say we don't want other minorities to be part of our graduation?
Thank you for the question. There are few scenes that are more inspiring than being.
I'm sorry. I'm going to ask you in a way that's going to be very quick because I have a little bit of time. Is it okay to segregate people based on their color? Yes or no?
I oppose segregation.
Okay, well, I do too, but it's happening on your campus, okay? Dr. Kornbluth, I'm sorry. We have on your campus something called Chocolate City, where Black-only dorms, where whites are excluded. Is it okay also for whites to set up a white-only dorm where minorities are excluded?
You know, actually at MIT, our students affiliate voluntarily with whichever dorm they want to. It's not exclusionary, it's actually positive selection by students which dormitory they want to live in.
Okay, so it's okay for Blacks to not make whites feel included. Is it okay for whites not to let Blacks feel included on your campus? We're talking about segregation, and it's obviously happening on your campuses.
You know, I think it's really important to say that there's a distinction between sending an exclusionary message and looking to other students for common experiences and support.
Okay. Let me just. I'm sorry, I'm running out of time. And what you're saying is very simply, in 1960s, it would have been okay for whites and Blacks to segregate themselves because they felt more like the people they're with. I disagree very, very much. But let me just say this: if in case we discover, and this is for everybody here, real quick, in the last few minutes, that there's a direct link from DEI and CRT to the growth of Marxist-centrist groups like BLM, Antifa, and the pro-Hamas on campuses,
question.
Would you then end the DEI initiatives on your campus?
Yes,
If there's a link between what that is and what the result of hatred.
Good
would that
question.
be would that be finished on your campus real quickly? We have just yes or no. Dr. Gay, let's start with you. Yes or no?
Our DEI efforts are about ensuring that all of our
Okay, so that's a no.
members
Okay,
welcome.
Doctor, I'm sorry, Miss Miguel. Yes or no? If it's found to be a link between Marxist, BLM, Antifa, and hate groups. Yes or no?
Our DEI office is committed to having everyone
Okay, so
thrive.
no. All right, and Miss Cornbluth, real quick, just yes or no. Sorry.
I find it hard to understand how equity and inclusion as a concept
Equity
is
is
a hatred
Marxism.
inducer.
Thank you so much. I think that says a lot. Thank you.
You
Appreciate it.
can give an answer in writing. And
Wow. Okay. Best question of the entire thing that we've watched so far. Best question of the entire thing. if it is found that there is a direct link between diversity and BLM and Marxist groups, which there absolutely is, would you get rid of it on your campus? And all three of them were like, no, our diversity offices don't do that. Now that's something we can look into. That's something that we can look into very, very, very effing easily. So this could be actually a fun little project. Why don't we, because I already have all this shit from Penn, why don't we, as a little group activity or exercise, start looking for direct links between the diversity offices at these universities and Marxist groups on their campuses? Because this is going to be like one of the easiest things we ever prove in like the history of ever, because these people self-identify themselves as socialists and Marxists and communists on the internet all over the places. Like I said, fucking Sophie Lewis works at the University of Pennsylvania. That's a good project. I wouldn't mind doing that project.
I have to remind members not to engage in personalities. Ms. McBath, you're recognized.
Thank you so much, Chairwoman Fox, Ranking Member Scott, to our staff, and thank you so much to our witnesses today. And it is not lost on me that the intellect, the intelligence that we have on this panel today, the most intelligent minds that are leading our highest institutions are women. So thank you so very much. I had the privilege of attending a very similar hearing in the Higher Education Subcommittee just a few weeks ago, and I'm glad to see that we're continuing this conversation at a full committee level. Acts or expressions of anti-Semitism have no place in our society and definitely not on any college campus or institution here in the United States. And what we must all understand is that this is not just the Jewish community's struggle. This is all of our struggle, and the Jewish community does not get to bear this burden alone. It is up to all of us to learn more and stand in solidarity against hate in our daily lives to ensure that the violence and the tragedies that follow unchecked, hatred will never be allowed to repeat themselves. I lost my son to that very hatred, so I understand it in my core. Similar to other...
I mean, really, all we would really have to do is get a staff list of the diversity officers on these college campuses and look at their social media and find out what training they're doing. Because I guarantee that if we just got like a diversity staff list and their training list, which is all going to be on their websites, it's not like undercover information, we would absolutely be able to link them back to Marxism. It wouldn't even be that hard.
Expressions of racial and religious hatred, all freedom-loving people, all those who truly believe in the ideals that this country was founded on and continue to strive towards, must stand together in the face of this disturbing increase in hate.
I mean, well, the ones testifying are, we should definitely look into Penn. Look into Penn, look into, I would do all the Ivies. I would do the Ivies in this order. MIT, I would kind of put to the side. I'm not that, MIT is going to be a little bit fuzzier because they're a technical school. Here's the list of schools I would do in order: Columbia, Penn, Harvard, Brown, Yale. Sophie's spoken at Cornell. That would be a good start. Columbia first, Penn, Harvard, Brown. Those are the ones I would do in that order. We're not going to watch the whole thing, so I'm just going to make this last tassel and then we're going to wrap it up. Don't worry about it.
Across the country and across the world. An outpouring of support for the Jewish community and public condemnation of the...
I mean, this is a good point. We could very easily do this with Berkeley, but Berkeley's not an Ivy League school. Yeah, I mean, Berkeley is like, I've spent a lot of time on Berkeley's website. Berkeley has this shit all over their website. So that's actually a really good point. Berkeley's also state funded because it's the University of California. I mean, Rutgers has it, but we're focusing. So guys, the Ivy League schools are Harvard, Yale, Princeton, Columbia, Brown, University of Chicago, University of Pennsylvania. I think that's it. Cornell. Those are the Ivies. So if we're talking about the Ivies, start with the Ivies.
These heinous acts by interfaith and community leaders, and elected officials in all backgrounds is the exact type of action that we need to take to confront this form of radical evil. Unity in the face of intimidation is how we are effectively going to resist hate in all of its forms. These actions seek to divide and intimidate us. We must show that we will not be intimidated, that we will not falter when our neighbors need us the most, that we are united against hate and we choose to love instead, irregardless of our political ideologies or our ethnic differences. As Dr. King once said, and I quote, "Returning hate for hate multiplies hate, adding deeper darkness to a night already devoid of stars. Darkness cannot drive out darkness. Only light can do that. Hate cannot drive out hate. Only love can do that." My community in metropolitan Atlanta is home to the largest community in the Deep South, the largest Jewish community in the Deep South. And it is no stranger to these incidents of anti-Semitism. I recall participating in a press conference with interfaith leaders, our local law enforcement, and elected officials, the Anti-Defamation League, and the Council General of Israel to the Southeast to condemn the appearance of anti-Semitic vandalism and white supremacist symbols that were definitely expressed in our neighborhoods and our communities. While the reason for our gathering was very somber, it was uplifting to see so many different people from so many different faiths and backgrounds all come together to make it clear that this is antithetical to what our community and our society stands for. Dr. Nadel, I've had you before me before, and it's good to see you again. Can you please discuss some of the schools or the communities that have built strong interracial and interreligious connections and relationships in the aftermath of a racist or anti-Semitic incident, and what building those connections looks like and why they're so critical and imperative to healing?
So first of all, thank you. It's wonderful to see you again. What really stands out is how at the personal level, change can happen. So for example, at the University of California at Berkeley, which is a campus that has been roiled, as these campuses have also been roiled, a professor of Israel studies and a faculty member from Middle Eastern studies sent a joint letter pleading with the campus to speak in a civil tone. These are two faculty members who do not agree politically on what has been going on, but they got together to write this, and then it was sent out to the entire community. It is those kinds of actions that we need to be applauding, and we need to be elevating and uplifting, and as I said before, they just don't tend to make headlines.
Thank you so very much, and I yield back my time.
Thank you, Ms. Macbeth. Mr. Good, you're recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Ms. McGill, September 21, a Penn student was taken into custody after bursting into a Jewish organization's morning prayer service, shouting anti-Semitic comments, destructing property, and so forth. On November 10, after the October 7 Hamas attack, Penn issues an apology for a display of light projected onto campus buildings with anti-Israeli messages, including phrases such as "from the river to the sea, Palestine will be free," and "Zionism is racism." On November 15, the Department of Ed announces that Penn is under investigation for possible civil rights violations of Title VI. And then just 2 days ago, another pro-Palestinian march happened on the edge of campus with Penn property being graffitied with offensive messages such as F the IDF, Intifada, the Arabic word for uprising, and so much and more. There is a deeply troubling tendency by many on the left, as has already been expressed in this hearing, in media, academia, among elected officials, and even some on this committee, who try to somehow conflate or
not a single one of these assholes for the entirety of this hearing has asked, why are so many college students participating in this? Where did they learn this? Where did the ideas come from? Why is it happening on a mass scale now, nationwide, not just at the elite college? Like, why hasn't we've been watching this for 2 hours. Why has not one single goddamn conservative who has been screaming about this stuff for years asked, why are the students doing this? We'll watch a little bit more. I'm going to attach some tassels to my shawl, and then we're going to wrap up.
Anti-Semitism with so-called Islamophobia. It's troubling that it seems that it's only Jews or Israelis who, when they're attacked or victimized, somehow become the oppressors or instigators of those attacks in the eyes of leftists or some on Penn's campus specifically. It's wrong to suggest that anti-Semitism and Islamophobia are equivalent problems in this country, as noted already in this hearing. Jewish hate crime is the most predominant hate crime in this country today. Ms. McGill specifically. Again, just this past Sunday night, there was another march on the edge of the UPenn campus, an anti-Israeli march. Has there, at any time since October 7, been an equivalent large-scale gathering of crowds in support of the slaughter of Muslims or the elimination of an Arab or predominantly Muslim state? Has that happened on your campus or anywhere near your campus that you're aware of since October 7?
Oh, shit.
Congressman, any act of hate, I find
I asked a
abhorrent.
specific question. Has there been any large gathering in support of the slaughter of Muslims or the elimination of an Arab state on or near your campus that you're aware of since October 7?
Congressman, not that I'm aware of.
Okay, thank you. So you would agree then it would be immoral or dishonest to treat the two as equivalent problems on campus, meaning anti-Semitism and Islamophobia, that there's an equivalency there on the scale of the scope of the problem on campus. Would you agree that would be immoral or dishonest to equate the two?
Congressman, I abhor all acts of hate.
Would you agree that it's immoral or dishonest to equate the two, that the problems are equal on your college campus or other college campuses? Any evidence of that effect?
Congressman, I abhor all acts of hate.
Thank you. Dr. Gay, on October 8, nearly 36 Harvard student groups authored a statement holding Israel responsible for the Hamas attack. On October 18, a Jewish Harvard Business School student was surrounded, accosted, and shoved to the ground while walking near and filming an anti-Israel protest. On November 10, when you condemned the use of the phrase "from river to the sea," over 100 faculty signed a letter criticizing your response to that, criticizing that phrase or condemning the use of that phrase. A Harvard Crimson survey of the class of 2022 showed that 93% of respondents viewed President Trump as unfavorable. 6% of students said they were conservative. 34% of students viewed favorably the Palestinian boycott, divestment, and sanctions, or BDS movement. Currently, Harvard is being investigated by the Department of Education for Title VI violations of civil rights. Title VI, as you know, prohibits recipients of federal funds from discriminating on the basis of race, color, or national origin. A Title VI violation would occur when an institution has allowed, permitted, or created a hostile environment that targets someone based on their race, color, or national origin. We know, of course, that Harvard has a history of dividing people based on race, based on the Supreme Court's decision in Students for Fair Admission versus Harvard. Does Harvard actually teach anti-Semitism in classes?
There we go. We got
Thank
there.
you, Congressman, for the question.
Kind of.
No, we do not. And we condemn anti-Semitism and at Harvard, there is no place for anti-Semitism.
As you know, Harvard received over the last 4 years, $3.2 billion in federal grants and contracts. During the 2021 school year, Harvard received $104 million through Title IV. Why should Congress continue to invest money in Harvard when Harvard clearly violates Title VI and helps foster a hostile environment for Jewish students?
Hard?
We are committed at Harvard to ensuring that all of our students thrive, that they feel safe and secure.
Well, apparently
And we're
100
grateful
professors who sent that letter to you criticizing your condemnation of anti-Semitic remarks don't agree with that. And your institution is clearly producing students who are sympathetic to a terrorist organization. Don't you think that's a misuse of taxpayer dollars?
Well,
my time has expired. I yield back, Madam Chair.
that's there. Then there we went
Thank
off
you,
the
Mr.
rails.
Good. Ms. Hayes, you're
That's how we
recognized
spun
for
that
5
bit.
minutes.
Thank you. First, I would like to frame my comments in the basic idea that I condemn all forms of hate. I don't think that there's any splitting
We were
hairs
so
there.
close.
That does not make me radical left. It makes me human to think that all people should feel safe in their environment. In the wake of the October 7th Hamas terrorist attacks in Israel, there's been a dramatic nationwide rise in reported anti-Semitic incidents, especially on college campuses. Anti-Semitism in this nation has been on the rise for at least a decade. The ADL found that the number of anti-Semitic incidents in the U.S. increased by more than 35% from 2021 to 2022, and we've seen those numbers skyrocket in the last 2 months. A few weeks ago at Central Connecticut State University in my district, a racial slur and a swastika were written on a bathroom stall on campus. We should all be working to find solutions to this problem, not doing what we're doing here today in this committee. The Biden administration released the national strategy to counter anti-Semitism earlier this year. The strategy seeks to increase awareness and education in schools, communities, and the workplace about anti-Semitism. This includes having the United States Holocaust and Memorial Museum launch the first ever U.S.-based Holocaust Education Research Center to promote effective Holocaust education. As a history teacher, I know the immense power of storytelling and how healthy dialogue is imperative to finding common ground. I would also like to make the point that teachers, professors, educators do not enter this profession to hate any group of people. I'm happy to hear that all of the people on the panel list responded to the question by my colleague that you do not collect data on the conservative or liberal views of faculty. I'd argue that would be unconstitutional. I would also like to note in the case of Harvard, you had a very conservative, notable alum who was invited to join your advisory committee. So diversity of thought is important, and all those views should be welcome on any college campus. President McGill, what steps has the University of Pennsylvania taken in the history to ensure students have an understanding of the history of anti-Semitism in order to address the rise of hate on your college campus?
I appreciate the question very much. There are a wide variety of things we do at Penn. We are very proud to be home to a very strong Jewish Studies department with faculty members who are expert, like Dr. Nadell, on the history and manifestation of anti-Semitism. Many students are taking those classes. We are proud to call Penn home to the Katz Center for Judaic Studies, which is a world resource in historical materials about Judaica and anti-Semitism and many centuries of history, actually. And many of our faculty and staff and students participate in programs at the Katz Center through their fellowships and education. And the third thing I'd identify, and there's more to say, we have many student groups that engage with one another across lines of disagreement, and they talk together, usually with the leadership of faculty, to learn from one another and from the faculty.
Which is exactly what is supposed to happen.
Yeah. I agree with this, Kyle. You and I are friends again. Would love there to be as much attention paid to communist history and atrocities as there is paid to the Holocaust, but then you'd have to teach socialist teaching about socialist history, so basically useless. I mean, we're like, and again, I'm not questioning the legitimacy of the Holocaust. I'm sure it happened exactly and precisely as the history book said, with absolutely no deviation or variance. But I do wonder why we spend so much time talking about the Holocaust and not as much time talking about, like, the Cultural Revolution in China. Correct me if I'm wrong, but how many people died during Mao's revolution in China? Does anyone know the number off the top? I mean, I think it was like a lot, right? I think it was like a lot. Well, no, I don't think that this is the problem, actually. I think people are very aware that the Holocaust happened. I think a lot less people are aware of the Cultural Revolution in China. Yup, and I'm like, listen, man, I married a Ukrainian, and I didn't even know about the whole. I still don't know how to pronounce that. I'm married to a Ukrainian, so we're talking like I mean, listen, man, it is a tragedy that no less than 6 million Jews died in the Holocaust. We can all agree on that. We can all agree. Tragedy should never have happened. One of the greatest tragedies in human history. I'm just wondering why, like, can we also agree that it is an equal tragedy, like at least an equal tragedy that, like, I mean, estimates may vary, but let's just say at least 40 million. Let's just say just to be on the low end. Isn't it an equal tragedy that tens of millions of people in China died during the Cultural Revolution? Why do we spend so much time on one specific tragedy and zero time on other tragedies that some might argue were far more great in proportion than the one specific tragedy that we have to spend all of our time talking about? And when is there going to be a Chinese Cultural Revolution museum in America? Is that being worked on anywhere? Is anyone going to build a Chinese Cultural Revolution museum? Because I think it probably would be pretty significantly impactful if some group built a museum in America and then made everyone go about the Chinese Cultural Revolution. Like, there is some relevance to what's happening in America right now. So, like, I mean, and again, I appreciate that no less than 6 million Jews died in the Holocaust. And I've been to the Holocaust Museum. I did the tour. I did the thing. Okay. I've read the Diary of Anne Frank. I went to school where Elie Wiesel taught. Like, I get it. I get it. The Holocaust was the worst thing that has ever happened in the history of the world. Except that there seem to be other things that have happened where tens of millions, if not hundreds of millions more people died, like the Chinese Cultural Revolution. Again, we'll lowball it. We'll say 40 million people died during just to lowball. Why don't we spend any time learning about that? Why isn't there any museum dedicated to that? Why isn't anyone going on a field trip to that? Why don't even people know that happened? Can't we talk about more than one tragedy? Why does the Holocaust exist as the highest order tragedy in the history of tragedies? Again, I'm not questioning it. Horrific event. Exactly 6 million people died and no less. I'm just saying there are other things that have happened where other people have died. And we don't ever talk about them, and we don't ever have congressional hearings about them, and we don't have museums about them, and we don't have required reading assignments about them, and we don't have, political mobs that are withholding donations to universities. I'm just saying.
A college campus. I also want to acknowledge the increase in Islamophobia after the October 7th attack. Not so-called Islamophobia, but Islamophobia. Palestinian students on and off college campuses have been targeted. President Gay, in your November 9th open letter to members of the Harvard community, you mentioned specific steps that you are implementing in connection with your ongoing work with the Antisemitism Advisory Group. Specifically, you mentioned work being conducted at the Office of Equity, Diversity, Inclusion, and Belonging. I'll also just say that 18,000 complaints have been received by the Department of Education Office of Civil Rights, the same office that my colleagues are trying to defund.
I have absolutely no doubt that that happened. But why does that make your tragedy the ultimate world-ending tragedy when there are other tragedies in which tens of millions of more people were killed that we never talk about? I mean, for me, again, if all human beings are equal, which I would think that we would think that the value of all human life is equal, just like the value of a Palestinian life is exactly the same as the value of an Israeli life, because we think that all human beings are equal, right? No one would ever say, and if they did, they would be wrong, that an Israeli life is worth more than a Palestinian life. I would hope that we could agree on that. So if we say that the value of all human life is equal, then why is one tragedy of so much greater significance than any other tragedy based on the method of which people were killed? I mean, for me, if I had to choose between, and I'm not saying I would ever want this because both are horrific deaths and they're all tragedies and we should mourn all of them and we should remember all of them so it never happens again. But I'm going to be honest, if I had to choose between like a slow death, like starvation, and like a relatively quick death, like, you know, some sort of room where things happen where people die in a relatively quick manner. I'm just saying, like, I wouldn't choose either if I had the option, but if I had to choose between a slow death like starvation, like what happened in Mao's China, versus a relatively quick death, I would probably choose the quicker one. And so I like, just because like starvation is a whole drawn out thing, like, I wouldn't want to go through that. I think that would be like one of my worst ideas of how to die. Again, and I don't think either is good because I think that the value of all human life is the same. But if we're going to get philosophical about it, I just don't know why we're saying that the manner of death should dictate the value of the life.
%48 of those have been sex discrimination, 32% disability discrimination, and 17% based on race or national origin. We have a problem. We need to welcome and embrace diversity in this country and teach young people why it is important to have a full understanding. My time has expired and I know I'm going to be gavelled out. So if you can just submit that question for the record, I would appreciate it. And thank you all for the work that you are doing.
I'd be happy to. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Hayes. Ms. Steele, you're recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Dr. Fox, for leading this important hearing. In October, I introduced H.R. 5933, the Deterrent Act, to bring greater transparency and accountability for institutions of higher education accepting donations from foreign entities. This bill will pass House hopefully tomorrow, and I'm hoping the Senate will take it up. The involvement of hostile foreign entities in our post-secondary institutions is one of the biggest threats facing colleges and universities. Question number one is Dr. Kornbluth. In September 2019, then Secretary DeVos opened the Section 117. It's a foreign disclosure section, investigation into MIT that has not been closed. What concrete steps that has MIT taken to address the lack of Section 117 reporting?
So let me say, and thank you for the question, we have cooperated fully. I can't comment on an open investigation, but I have to say we have greatly increased our reporting to be fully compliant.
So it's not done yet, but it's still under investigation.
All right.
As I understand it.
A study released just last month by the Institute for the Global Study of Antisemitism found that from 2015 to 2020, institutions that accepted unreported money.
Well, I've just finished attaching the tassels to my shawl, guys, so I think we're going to wrap it up because I got another stream in a little over an hour that I got to go get some dinner for. But I would say, and again, I say this believing that all tragedies are equally tragic, that all human life is equal. I would say that I don't believe I'm the one making equivalencies about the tragedies. I would say that the people who are saying that we should spend all of our time on one tragedy and zero time on other tragedies because they don't believe that all tragedies are created equal, I would say they're the ones that are making moral equivalencies, but that's just me. I could be proven wrong. I think that all death is equally horrific, and I think that we should probably talk about all of it, not just one. But that's just me. Anyway, I've attached my tassels. You can see giant tassels for a giant shawl. All right, guys, I'm going to go get some dinner. I will be back in a little while for nothing remotely controversial. Thank you for hanging out on Carlin's tassel making stream today, where we watched a congressional hearing where nothing happened. Whatever. All right, I'll see you guys in a little bit. Bye.